Everybody's ready? All right. So we'll go ahead and start our meeting. Oh, I love it when there's a full crowd. Welcome all. Start of our council meeting. Today is August 6th, 2024. This is Town Council meeting number 15-24. Welcome to Town Hall. Our agenda is briefly suspended for a moment while we can recognize our Citizen of the Year, which has actually been a recognition long in the waiting. And usually we do this much earlier in the year, but several curbs got in front of us, but we got over them all. So we're going to focus on that right now to start off our meeting, and there'll be a couple of minutes for a little bit of informal gathering after the Citizen of the Year presentation. Citizen status and citizenship are terms that get thrown around oftentimes in the context of our country's borders and the earnest desire of many around the world to gain what most of us have by birthright, thanks to insightful decisions and guidance from 237 years ago in the framing of what the United States was to become and what it is today. We tend to coast on the luxury of being a citizen here in Freeport and what that status yields to us and for us. Upon some reflection of those original writings from 237 years ago, it's easy to see that citizenship is actually two-way. It requires nearly as much as it grants. It is in this flow of some requirement that we honor here today with the Freeport Town Council Citizen of the Year granted to Mary Davis for 2023. If I was smart, that would be a sign for me to stop my speech. But I wrote this. The award is intended to highlight and honor the Freeport resident who demonstrates this two-way dynamic of citizenship with clear examples of selfless giving, contributions to the common good, leadership coupled with humility, and modeling for us all what being a part of a community really means and really requires. Mary sets the bar high. Over the past 10 years, Mary's leadership at the Freeport Economic Development Council as board chair, including staffing as interim director at least twice, has again and again reflected those qualities of a standout resident, a true citizen that listens, leads, stays focused, is patient, never loses sight of the goal. The review and change process in Freeport that started with the Downtown Revision Plan provided an ideal vehicle for Mary Davis to shine with her skills and her own vision and her ability to bring the community along with her on some bumpy and turbulent paths. Community leadership is vital to a healthy local economy, but it's much more than dollars and jobs and tax rates. It's about engaging and motivating people to believe in their future as well as the future of their beloved town. Mary has repeatedly shown how she can inspire and spread a smile across diverse and sometimes opposing segments of our town populace. This is where citizenship earns its credibility. This is where Mary elevates the community needs and the benefit of the town above any personal goals or rewards and shows everyone why we like living here. With the skills from the business sector honed in her positions at IDEX and for the past 10 years leading FEDC through a series of accomplishments, Mary has worked tirelessly sometimes to the point of exhaustion, for Freeport. And so I'm pleased and honored to present the highest award, Citizen of the Year, to Mary Davis. We have a plaque.
You have a plaque?
I don't have my hands on it just this second, but yeah. And I encourage you to address your thrones here if you so choose.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Lovely, very kind words, and you put this on there. So you know, John, I don't have any problems taking the mic when I'm advocating for something. You see me do that a lot of times, and if you gave me a PowerPoint, I'd be pretty good, right? Just deal with it.
Double doors for you to get out.
Okay, we got double doors to get out. But, you know, when you talk about all the things, I can stand this.
No, I thought it was on.
Okay. When you talk about all the accomplishments over the last years, you know, I think you know that I have two really big beliefs. I love bringing people together that have various opinions because I think that we make better decisions for Freeport when all opinions are at the table. And I also believe that it gets messy in the middle, and I don't give up when it gets messy in the middle. And I have to thank so many people who helped us do all those things you just talked about. You know, it's my FEDC council that, oh, you're going to give me that now. Now I know. Now I got my mic. Yeah, that goes off. It's the FEDC board, you know, of just unbelievably dedicated, opinionated people who want great things for Freeport, not only economically, but they live here, so they want it to be for how we live. It's my street gang, that is a group of businesses in the downtown area that want the downtown to thrive, and they're just willing to do really wild, weird stuff, like try to close Main Street and bring festivals here and such. And it's also all the residents that showed up for all the downtown vision. There were so many people that came out and gave us their opinions and such. You know, it's the town who stood beside us when we said, hey, you know, can you give us the money? We want to do a downtown vision. And the council who was always there, no matter like what weird things we came up with. So, you know, thank you. Really kind words. It's really very heartfelt and very lovely to be appreciated in this way. And I think that really, I'm just a weird person who likes to bring a lot of people together and make things happen. So. But I really thank you so much. Very,
you deserve it.
Very, very kind.
Magically, the plaque appeared in my hand. There you go.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you so much. Now we get cookies?
Yes. So we'll have a few minutes here to informally talk to Mary, enjoy some beverages and snacks, and we'll get to our meeting in about 10 minutes.
Thank you.
Well, I'm reluctant to put a lid on the celebration of Mary Davis, but we do have a lengthy agenda, so we're going to try and get going. We actually have not officially started our council meeting, so our first thing to do is to say the Pledge of Allegiance, and then we'll find out who's here. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So we start our council meetings to get into the record. Councilors that are here present and any that may be attending virtually. We'll just go right down the line. Councilor Pillsbury. Present. Councilor Fournier. Here. Councilor Lawrence. Here. Councilor Benoit.
Here.
Councilor Smith.
Present.
Councilor Pilch.
Here.
And the chair, John Egan, is here. Our next order is to waive the reading of the minutes from meeting number 14-24 held on July 16th, and to accept the minutes as printed. Any questions, or can we go ahead and?
So moved.
Minutes.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any comments about the minutes? All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, great. Fantastic. Our next item is some announcements. I have a couple to read, and then we'll see if anybody else has any. Nomination papers for all elected positions will be available starting, last week, July 29th. Open seats include Councilor at Large, Councilor District 4, RSU 5 Board of Directors, Sewer District Trustees, the Water District, and you can contact Chris Wolf at the Clerk's Office for more information about that. And the Police Advisory Board, this is a committee that we formed about 3 years ago, is looking for interested people to complete out this board so they can continue to meet. This committee's mission is to increase equity in policing, minimize harm in the community, improve lines of communication and accountability between residents and the Freeport Police Department. And I believe the Freeport Police Department is actually quite pleased with how this process has gone and enjoying the committee's participation. If this sparks your interest, please reach out again to the town clerk's office for more information. The draft data inventory chapters for the exciting Freeport Comprehensive Plan are now online. The public can view and provide comments to this project at futurefreeport.com. Seriously, a lot of work goes into the comprehensive plan, and this is a 10-year document that guides the town, not just on its use of land, but on recognition of what's going on and what's going good and what we need more of and what we might need less of. So I encourage you to participate. There's several different ways to let your voice be heard in the comp plan. Save the date for the community workshop number 2 on the comprehensive plan. The next one is our housing workshop on September 23rd. It'll be a community conversation led by housing expert Jeff Levine to talk about ideas, concerns, and experiences with local housing issues. This will be a workshop held at Meeting House Arts from 6 to 8 p.m. on September 23rd. So I hope to see a lot of you there. Any other councilors have other announcements before we move on? Matt?
Tomorrow at 8:30 a.m., there's a walkthrough at the sewer district on the new construction project by the Project Review Board. So I encourage anyone, if they have questions or concerns about the project, to feel free to attend.
All right. Any other announcements? All right, our next item on the agenda is information exchange. This is a chance for councilors to share feedback from constituents and what's going on with our committees and other sort of news and updates on what may be happening off the council, going on in the community. And I just want to start with a particular one and sort of ask for some input from the council. This is just coming up recently, but we've had a committee in place to examine opportunities for the potential community purpose or use of the adjacent property, which the town does not own, but is available right here at 22 Main Street. And so we've had a committee composed for, at least 5 months, maybe about that. Trying to brainstorm different ideas about what might come forward. And again, the town doesn't own it, so we don't have a lot of direct control or input, but we have a good relationship with the owner who's open to hearing some ideas. That committee has struggled to come up with a consensus idea, and so there is a suggestion from some members of that committee to have the council move this issue to a referendum item on the fall election. Which I think at this point, if we haven't been able to see a consensus, that may be our next best move. We had actually talked about that way back when there was an opportunity for the town to take an active move on that particular parcel, to maybe have a community vote on it. Again, the town doesn't own it today. The referendum would largely be, do we consider making a move to do something with that for a community purpose? So I think without any clear consensus from the committee, which has diligently been meeting with a broad section of voices, unable to come up with a consensus, it sounds like maybe we just need a bigger input from the entire community about whether we do something with that.
I'm not sure that's actually correct. Consensus is that there is no purpose, but we haven't had the final word on what they say, so I think we should wait for that. I think there's a report that's been revised a couple of times.
Matt's on that committee. Matt, you got a comment on that?
Sure. So the committee has been meeting diligently since about April. We've come to a almost final version of the committee report. We're meeting one more time on the 12th to finalize that and send that back to the council. I'll just say candidly, without getting into too much of the detail, I think your statements are fairly accurate in that the committee did struggle to come up with a majority opinion, but there's a lot of nuance to that, and I welcome the chance for the committee to report back out formally. I think it's just an important step in the process.
like to recognize Andy Arsenault, Committee Chair. Andy?
Thank you. I agree with something what Matt said. We got one more meeting. I wrote a report, short and sweet. Some people thought it should have been a little more filled out. There's been some additions to it. We're going to go over those final additions and try to come up with a final report to pass in. I can say I think there was a consensus, and the consensus was there was probably 4 people, 2 out of 7. This basically said, unless it's really cheap, they don't want to buy it. Some people didn't want to buy it at all. So I think your consensus is, the fact that we did not have a consensus I don't think is true. I think there were a majority of people that were not in favor of purchasing it. But we'll have a report for you in a week or
Yeah,
so.
so 12th of August? is
We're
that-
going to meet. Yep.
Right, okay, great.
Thanks.
I was just advised that we have until first or second week of September if we were to do anything, so we have a little bit of time to plan on this and talk about it, so.
Yep.
Great, all right, thank you
you.
very much, Andy. All right, so we'll just go down the row here for information exchange. Dan?
I can be real brief. I just want to offer an apology to anybody who was stuck in traffic today. I was filling in for our chair, and along with town manager and assistant town manager. We met with Pete Buttigieg, the Secretary of Transportation, who was in town with our senator and representative, our Senator King and Representative Pingree, to review progress on the 2 bridges and just talk about infrastructure investment in Maine in general. It was very productive. My key takeaway was that we are the least densely populated state east of the Mississippi, but yet we have no shortage of infrastructure and road miles and bridges. So a lot of the projects that we're seeing done wouldn't have been able to be done at the state level without federal dollars. So it was a pretty good discussion. So apologies if you were stuck in traffic. The exit 20 bridge, I'm told, was due to be open at the end of this calendar year with some cleanup to follow. So the end is in sight. Yeah.
Great. Eric, something to share?
I have a couple items. First, report out from Municipal Facilities Committee. We met on the 31st of July on several items, 2 of which do appear later on this agenda, so I won't go into those. But the major time of the committee was spent once again reviewing the potential lease renewal for the Dunning Boatyard in South Freeport. I reported to you at the end of May that what we had asked the manager to do was to negotiate a lease essentially with 3 items: a 1-year lease term, an updated site plan, and an updated rental rate. And we were hoping that that new lease would be finished in the month of June, starting by the 1st of July. When we met on the 31st, there was still no consensus on the 1-year lease term or the updated site plan. So the updated rental rate is agreed to. There is concern on the part of the tenant that he is looking for longer security at that site than a 1-year term. I think our concern, given that this continues to be prolonged and the fact that regardless of when that lease is renewed, we've said that it's going to start on July 1st. We're now even eating into that 1 year even more the longer we delay. So I think we did make some progress, and I'm hoping that we will meet again before the end of the month with agreed upon site plan, agreed upon lease terms. And I will say that the other piece where there has been progress is there have been some additional markers laid out so that we're making progress on that clearly delineated year-round leased premises versus dock storage and things like that. So I know that has appeared on our agenda and been tabled multiple times, so I just wanted to let you all know where we are with that. The other thing I wanted to share is I've certainly had a lot of constituent conversation, and I know some of you have as well, with folks that are concerned about the conversation that we had at the last meeting about firearms discharge noise. Clearly, a lot of people are upset thinking that we are moving towards some sort of firearms ordinance or ban on firearms discharge, which was certainly not my understanding of that conversation. And I was able to have several productive conversations, either by email or telephone, with folks to explain where I thought the council was, in that I've heard no expression of any interest to do anything regarding firearms that would in any way limit hunting or preparation for hunting, that really this is coming from some other constituent concerns that we've heard about noise. And obviously there's some noise that's of concern and some noise that I think we all anticipate and expect with firearms, living in Maine and living in Freeport. But I would say that where I was able to have the most productive conversation was explaining that these are really constituent concerns that have come to us, and that even if they are a minority of concerns, we have to take them seriously. At least I feel like I need to take them seriously. It doesn't mean that we will take action on them, but if I wasn't elected to only listen to these people or those people. I was elected to listen to everybody, and I have to listen to those concerns and ask questions and really feel like I understand the issue before I can make a decision about something. So I understand, I suspect a lot of you are in the room today to hear more about what we're doing about firearms noise. And I do want to assure you that I think we all appreciate your participation in the process, whether you are emailing us or calling us or showing up at meetings. That's what we want. We want to hear from you, and we want to hear what you're thinking. Nobody's trying to do something secretive, and I think what took me aback the most was when it seemed to me that people thought that we were trying to do something without a lot of public notice. And so I just wanted to report that I've had a lot of conversations where afterwards people who had been really upset, at least to some extent, better understood what the process was and why we were asking these questions.
Thanks, Eric. Other information exchange?
I just want to add on to that as well. I reviewed the July 16th meeting, which I think was sort of the impetus of a lot of reaction, which is, again, I think is great to have folks in the room. And, you know, what dawned on me is that we have so many of these conversations in passing and sort of in meetings that don't always get onto the public record. So how important it is for me when talking about these kinds of subjects is to make sure that I provide that context. Because mentioning that we had the possibility to do that certainly didn't mean to imply that we would do it, but that it was an option that we could consider in our long scope of options if we decide to take action at all. So.
Darrell?
My phone, too, has been ringing off the hook, and I think what the issue is, when we look at government and an idea is put forward, which we did put an idea forward, and we instructed the manager to go out and look at areas that had ordinances we may want to look at. We asked her to go out and contact the Department of Inland Fisheries. So that people took is, boy, this is going to be an action item coming down the road. And I think they're right. I'm glad a lot of people are here to come up and say, you know, that that's not where we need to go. And as I stated in the meeting, I think this is a neighbor versus neighbor. And maybe later on tonight, we could show where we stand to see if we are going to move forward or not. And I think we owe that to the public.
And I think, you know, I brought this up knowing that this had been an issue that had been discussed before my time on council. This isn't the first time we've had this discussion. And to me, you know, we had instructed the chief and Sophie to figure out the scope of the problem and to figure out sort of if it was localized, if it wasn't, to kind of make sure we had all of the information before we even considered an action. And I also want to say that when I brought it up as a noise issue, never a gun issue, a noise issue. And my hope is that it would be a neighbor-to-neighbor conversation. I think most of us agree with that. But in my conversations with the manager and the chief, we can't have that conversation if they don't know who's doing it. So my concern is, I want it to be neighbor to neighbor. I think any sort of regulation is not what I want at all. But if we don't know who's doing it, we can't have those neighbor to neighbor conversations. So that's my major concern.
Other items for information exchange? Our second meeting in the month of August is actually going to be really tough duty. We're going out to Buston's Island to meet with the Village Corporation out there. It's once a year chance. So our second meeting won't be here, just as an announcement. We'll be out on Buston's Island for a gathering with the Village Corporation. It actually will happen next Tuesday, a week from this evening. All right, if there's no more information exchange, we'll go to the town manager's report.
I've had a really busy week getting ready for Mayor Pete and with some personnel issues. So I don't have major news to share. If you have questions, love to take them.
Darrell?
I just have a point that I would like to congratulate. There was a serious call at a local hotel where a person had coded. Personnel responded. The person was flatlined when they got there, worked on him and brought him back. So well, that shows the importance of having proper staffing and quick response for people, and they had a heck of a save. So I want to congratulate the public safety staff on a great job.
Great. Congratulations. Our next item is public comment on non-agenda items. And so this is the chance for the public to speak to the council. It generally is not a dialogue, so we ask you to just make your presentation. If there's a pointed question, we can try and respond to that. And generally, we try and keep the comments to 3 minutes. Again, if it's about one of the public hearings that are coming up later on, there'll be a chance to speak later. So this is the segment of the agenda for public comment on things that are not on our printed agenda. So the floor is open, and please line up so we can have an orderly procession of folks. Joyce.
Joyce Vayu with the American Legion here in town. Short history lesson. On March 12th in 1900, at the annual town meeting of Freeport, a monument committee was appointed. This is where the monument that is in Monument Park came from. The monument cost $1,500 and was made like the Soldier and Sailors Monument located in South Portland. The town donated $500, and the G.W. Randall Post, GAR, Grand Army of the Republic, with the assistance of the Women's Relief Corps, raised the rest. At 3 p.m. on Saturday, May 26, 1906, the monument was unveiled in the memory of Freeport's sons who gave their lives. There were over 300 sons that left in 1861 from Freeport for the Civil War. The Harriseket Band, which was of Civil War origin, furnished the music, and General Joshua Chamberlain was the orator of the day. And as we increase usage of Monument Park, there's one usage that I'd like to see decrease, and that's the children climbing on the monument. And so I'd suggest to the town that we need to put just a small bottom left-hand corner on each side of the monument. Please don't climb on. And it's also probably a liability issue for the town that needs to be addressed.
Easy solution. Thanks, Joyce.
Thanks.
Good evening. My name's Ed Bradley. I used to be up there. I'm glad I'm not. You guys have so much to deal with. I'm here representing a small group of people who have been involved in the issue in the past of 22 Main Street. We are unappointed, unrecognized, just on our own volition, but we've all had some involvement in the issue as it's evolved. Sue Nurse, John Patterson, Ford Reike, and Karen, and Gordy Hamlin and I. And as we've watched the process proceed, we've come to through information we've gotten formally and informally, to think that the committee that was created about a year ago or 6 months ago is reaching a point where it's going to issue a report and it's not conclusive. We are committed because we think that 22 Main Street is a significant location of real significance and importance to the public purposes of the town. We recognize and believe that the committee worked hard and diligently, and there's no reason for us to think they did anything wrong or improper or not heartfelt and hardworking. But we think that a report out of them, which comes and apparently will come soon, will lead to no specific conclusions about what to do. We feel very strongly that if we are back at that point where we were when that committee was appointed, that the solution to this problem is to make a decision. We don't know what the decision would be if it were sent to referendum, but we think that's where the referendum should go, and the public should decide this issue of importance to the whole town. I know there will be people who disagree with even that, but at this point, we do need a decision. And I'm here on behalf of those people to say we were prepared to go to a private referendum process. And we were exploring that process over the last week or so. And when in discussions with Sophie and with the town clerk, we've come to realize that that process, while available to us, is both time-consuming and expensive, not only for us, but for the town. And that the easiest and most direct and best way to do that, and to keep the town in control of even that process, is to have the town council make a referendum referral to the voters in November. So I'm here on behalf of all of those people, on behalf and in recognition and respect for all of the process that's occurred in the past, to make the suggestion that this is a hard decision, in part because it's not totally in focus right now. It will be in the future. It would be a terrible mistake in our point of view to let this property go into commerce, where somebody would make a presentation that would create another conflict. Let's own it. Let's buy it. Let's keep it if we need under our control until the time matures where we know exactly what to do. It's not a lot of money. And by delegating this process to the town manager, you can control the language of the referendum. So on behalf of the people I identified, and I think a lot of other people in the town who have been involved, please consider sending this to referendum so we have a decision once and for all about a piece of property that I believe we will regret very much if we don't keep it and it's sold to someone for purposes that we may all have issues with. So thank you for listening.
Thanks, Ed.
Good afternoon, or good evening, actually. My name is Peter Anzolini. I live on South Freeport Road. As most of you know, I'm always a fan of talking about taxes. So I'd like to bring that up tonight as a little bit different slant. So we know we passed the school budget, and we know that that was $2 million increases. We know we passed the municipal budget, and that was about $1.5 million increase. So, you know, when you put it that way, it's like, yeah, we don't really know what it means, right, until we get our tax bills. Well, I'd like to tell you, I took 2023 valuation data, and I used an estimated mill rate. And the numbers aren't perfect because they're not current numbers, but I want to tell you what the really impact is. So District 1 supports the town tax base by 18%. District 4 represents the town tax base by 16%. District 2 represents the tax base by 34%. And District 3 represents it by 31%. So all your spending, you know, those people that live in District 1 and District 4, you know, it's a little increase. But those people that live in District 2 and District 3 feel the pain. Because what it's going to end up is our tax, an average tax for District 3 is about $8,000. For District 2, it's about $6,800. The reason is that you've got 1,300 households in District 2, and you've got 962 households in District 3. So you know, spending, I see a lot of spending components here. But understand that there's an impact to at least 2 districts in town, which I don't think are being represented. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter.
Hi, I'm Steve Day Jr., lifetime resident here in Freeport. I brought a little bit of history for all the councilors. There's a 1973 and a 1974 hunt license that I got from the town of Freeport from Phyllis Roy. When I hear somebody thinking that gunfire and, you know, the shooting sports are in jeopardy at all, ruffles my feathers. My father taught me to shoot. I've taught both my boys to shoot, as I can look at a lot of these people, and that's how they were taught generationally. Really think seriously about not letting anything like this happen because, you know, it's not good for the town. I think that there'd be a lot of serious issues if this moves anywhere even near forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Well, it's hard to follow that. I'll do my best. First off, thank you very much for allowing me to address the town council. I'm here tonight to talk about the perceived firearms issue that we have in the town of Freeport.
Excuse me, sir, could you please introduce yourself? So we have
I'm
your name on the
sorry,
record?
Dan McCormick.
Thank
I'm a local resident. First off, Maine and Freeport in general have a long history of having hunting tradition that goes back, to his point, generations. We also share Second Amendment rights, correct? I want to give you guys some stats here that I jotted down before the meeting tonight. Yarmouth is roughly 23 square miles with a population of 8,990. These are slightly older stats, but they were what I could find. That roughly works out to 391 people per square mile. Cumberland is 8473 pop with 26 square miles, so 325 is the square mile, or people per square mile. Brunswick, 463 on 47 square miles. Freeport is 46 square miles with a population of 8737 for 190 people per square mile. We are not a populated town. We do not have an issue with firearms in this town. We may have an occasional issue with a neighbor to neighbor, but we do not have an issue with people ripping off rounds in somebody else's backyard. So I encourage you to think very seriously. If we're going to do anything on this, we'll destroy tradition, everything that Maine stands for. Thank you very much. Have a nice night.
Thanks, Steve.
My name is Brian Sloat. I live on Beach Hill Road. And I was born and raised in Freeport. Lived here for a long time. It's not a bad town. And if there is an issue about an ordinance or perceived to be an ordinance coming up that has to do with guns and shooting, Freeport's fine. I have served in this town all my life. Police officer, firefighter, EMT, planning board, project review board. It's a nice town. It's a place where people want to come. I don't ever remember, ever, having a major incident with guns in this town. I don't hunt on my property because I prefer to go further north. But there are a lot of people that hunt on their properties. And it's not just hunting. It can be target shooting. Dead animals in the road that need to be put away that are suffering. That happens everywhere. if the reasoning behind this talk about an ordinance is because of noise or it's because of guns, then it appears to be maybe the latter. We don't need this. Our lives here are just fine. Thank you.
Thanks.
My name's Justin, and I'm going to say the same thing that everybody else has said. I am actually one of the ones that has been contacted by the police department on some noise stuff, and I've made my information available to anyone that would like to talk with me. I'm located at 46 Prout, right at the end of it. I'm happy to talk if it's a neighbor, which is what my initial reaction was as well. I'm more than happy to come up with something reasonable to help whatever situation is going on over there that we need to kind of address. But I think that creating a town ordinance for a neighbor-to-neighbor problem is kind of silly. So that's all.
Great. Thanks, Jason.
Good evening. My name is Samantha Hughes. I also live on Prout Road, and I am a mother of a small child, and I was not raised in a gun-loving household, and my neighbor shoots frequently. That being said, I have never felt concerned about his responsible use of firearms, and I agree that it is a neighbor-to-neighbor issue. The police have been called multiple times to his property when he was simply target practicing. As for noise, I would say that the train that we live right next to and the ATVs that go down the railroads are just as loud or louder than he is. So, yeah, I don't think an ordinance is really necessary. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth.
Yeah, thank you. Andrew Arsenault, Route 1 South. I rise and, along with these guys here, you say it's a noise ordinance, but it is a gun ordinance because you're discussing the noise from guns. So unless you want to pass out silences for everybody, you're going to have noise. My forebears fought in the Revolution so we could have these rights. There were sharpshooters and target shooters and fighters that came from North Yarmouth at the time, and this was all North Yarmouth. So coming up on 250 years or so that we've been doing this in this state, these towns, and I don't think any talk of this is really productive. I mean, so if some neighbor doesn't like what the other neighbor's doing, you know, I remember when I first got up years ago and they were changing the zoning and all the newcomers were complaining, oh, don't do that in your driveway, don't fix your boat. They told us that complained that we'd lived there forever. If you don't like it, move out. That's what we were told. And we were pretty incensed about that because we'd lived there for generations. And now people move in and they don't like a little bit of noise. And I understand they might move from the city and gunfire means somebody shooting each other. But they have to understand that up here, we're not shooting each other. That's not what we're doing. We're target shooting. We're having fun with firearms. And it's pretty safe. I don't remember anybody getting shot with a stray bullet in Freeport or getting shot rained down on them or anything else. I live down on Route 1. Guy out behind me target shoots. He calls up, hey, if you hear some gunfire, it's me. He's got a big piece of steel out there he shoots at. It's safe. My father used to shoot out back. Half the cops in the county were out back shooting with my father. And, you know, we're all trying to be pretty safe here. So if there's a noise issue, it's a gun issue. So don't try to fake us on that one. Because if it's noise from a gun, it's going to affect the gun shooting. So I think we're all here to say it's time to put this to an end and bury it. So thank you.
Thanks, Andy.
Hi, I'm Daniel Winship. I live on Prout Road, and I come from multi-generational families in Freeport. Most of what I see, because I've had them called on me myself, is from people that don't want to hear it. They call, and they repeatedly called, knowing that the police told them that it's safe, it's okay. Personally, it's harassment. I believe you've heard a story, Sophia Wilson, about a family that was sitting there watching their TV, watching their wedding on their anniversary. They pretty much got swatted, no fault of the cops. Somebody called and said that there was shooting and there was arguing. None of that happened. If that's not harassment, I don't know what is. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name's Christy Labors. I also live on Prout Road as well. My husband comes from generations of hunting. His grandfather taught him how to shoot. Vice versa, he's taught his children how to shoot safely within the laws and the guidelines. I would like to voice his email that he sent. He's not here, able to be here, because he's on a job. And it says, I am a lifelong resident of Freeport, graduated from Freeport High School at 1989, and live on Prout Road. I have lived at the same residence since 1978, District 2. I've become aware of a council meeting on 9/3 that will have a hearing about banning firearms discharge in Freeport. I have to travel for work and will not be able to attend the meeting. So I'm writing you, my district councilman, Eric, to voice my opposition for banning firearm discharge in Freeport. I'm a landowner with a large enough parcel to shoot on my property legally under the state of Maine laws on firearm discharge. I shoot for various reasons. Target, to keep my skills honed so that I hit what I am intending to shoot at. Hunting, because everything is expensive and animal management is key for a healthy population in an ever-growing town like Freeport. Ever hit an animal with your car or been amazed at the number of ticks we have? Varmint control and protection against the rabid animals. Livestock protection from rats, coons, foxes, coyotes. I have a small farm. Sighting in a new firearm or varying of firearms is still sighted correctly so that my intended target is hit. I shoot safely, and according to the Maine law, I have been visited by the police because someone's called about gunfire. And I welcome this because to verify that I am shooting safely, I wanted to continue to do so. It is completely unacceptable to not be able to shoot on my own land where I have a safe range to do so. Meeting the Maine state law criteria for firearm discharge. This state does have a heritage of and promotion of hunting. We are the home of LL Bean, right? It is completely unacceptable to not be able to shoot on somebody else's land with their permission to hunt, shoot varmints, or target shoot when it meets the criteria of the state law. Freeport currently has ordinances on noise at work. People shoot, people don't like it, the police are called, the police see it safe, and they leave. With all the noise that goes on during the day around my area, we don't need to create more ordinances on what noises are acceptable. It is all noise. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello, my name's Mike Winship, and I live on the Prout Road too. And I got a pretty good sized parcel of land, and I have a lot of folks that come up and ask me, hey, can I hunt on your land? And you know, when I talk to a lot of people, heck yeah, you can, you know, clam digger, you know, got a family, would like to just get away for a moment, you know, and breathe out. I got at least 2 that hunt with bows. But, you know, it's a safe area, and I don't mind anybody hunting on my land, and I certainly do oppose it. And, you know, I live 2 miles that way, and you know, noise, I can hear LL Beans firing off fireworks all the time, and it don't bother me none. And, but, you know, there's a lot of noise from a lot of different things that a lot of people enjoy. And, gee, that's too bad to take that away from somebody. And, you know, if we don't have a problem, we don't need a solution. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Dorothy Ann Heinley. Some of you might know me as Ann. I live on Wardtown Road. I'm not from Maine nor Freeport. I'm from Wisconsin. Maine chose me. I married somebody from Freeport, 4th generation. He also happens to be somebody 10th generation from everybody who came off the Mayflower, both sides of his family. Long history of what the United States is about and the rights that were granted. I started this by saying that I'm not from Maine, I'm from Wisconsin. I don't try and make all of you Patriots fans Packer fans. I've assimilated to Maine with that one exception. I just won't give up my cheese head. But I don't make you wear a cheese head for me. I think it's a neighbor-to-neighbor issue. Just have them talk to each other. We have a large piece of land. We let people hunt on it. We target practice. We're teaching our grandchildren. We're teaching their friends how to shoot properly. Leave it alone. We're a home of LL Bean, for goodness sakes. Tell them to talk to each other and figure it out between themselves. And I promise I'll never ask you to be a Packer fan, but watch them. Thanks.
Thanks, Ann.
Hi, my name is Jerry Schofield. I live on Hunter Road in Freeport, and I've only lived in Freeport 48 years, so I feel like a baby compared to everybody else who's been up here speaking. So, but I did serve on the police department for 40 years, and 28 years of those as chief of police. And echoing the comments that you've already heard, so I'm not going to be redundant and talk about that. But saying that I was chief for 28 years, a lot of local ordinances are very difficult to enforce. So if you have a noise issue with neighbors that they can't work out, be careful in trying to enact another ordinance to put a burden on a department who I'm sure has plenty more important things to do than to try to chase down these. Is an important item it is to the complaining neighbors in the course of what goes on in our court systems. It's a pretty minor issue, and it's hard to get a lot of things done with it to begin with. So just put a lot of thought into the process and go from there. Thank you.
Thanks, Jerry.
Hi, excuse me, Chalmers Hardenberg, 11 Somerset, editor of the Freeport Insider. I'm not here to talk about guns. I'm here to talk about housing, and specifically, there's no housing committee on the August calendar. So I know that our town manager and Chris are making great efforts trying to get the website to be there and accurate, but excuse me. So 2 points. One, please get housing on the calendar. Please get the housing committee. It's not even listed as a committee under the town committees anymore. And the second point is I am begging you, all of you, to not schedule housing and project review and planning board and now our upcoming dog bone committee and comp plan. These are all separate and all very important points for the town going forward. So I would like to ask those in charge to schedule each of those on separate meeting days and times. Thank you.
Thanks, Chalmers. We were going to meet on the 14th, but we can move that if it's a PRB. Yeah. Anyone else wish to make public comment on non-agenda items?
Hi, thank you. Joe Miliaccio, Freeport resident, former town council of planning board. I've seen a lot since 1977 when my folks moved here when I was little. And I had only come up here to speak on one or two things quickly. And as seems to be the case more and more each year in Freeport, there's a lot more worthy of comment by the council and their actions. So first was, we spent a lot of time, and I came here for Mary's thing too, so we spent a lot of time on economic development, energy. Everyone's trying to have people love and want to come back to Freeport. It really is about time we worked in some type of connectivity, public visitor, Wi-Fi, whether it's red zone wireless like they have in Rockland or some others. We pay for buses to come to Freeport and move our citizens. We pay for a lot. And I would just say that, especially when the trees come in the summer, there's no darn signal. AT&T, Verizon, anybody. So please add that maybe to the look-to list. The second one was about the comments I saw in the minutes from the last meeting about this gun issue, so I came to listen. And I don't know, there's nothing needed here. You do it through noise ordinance. That's what it is. And I remember years ago, someone, when I was up there, moved into town, and they were very upset that, the train was going to be coming by their house and blowing a whistle. But they had lived there for 4 years. The train was known to be coming for 10 years. They probably got the house cheaper because there's going to be a train there. So stop complaining to me about a train. You knew it was happening. Likewise, people retain and keep large lots of land just to be able to comply with Maine state discharge firearms laws. So they're paying taxes on that. Handle it through the noise ordinance. And I'm really disturbed to hear that people are going out to survey who's shooting and stuff. I mean, it does seem a little bit like harassment as a person who goes out and shoots. Second one was, a third one that came up was, you don't need to set up a new committee at this time for the dog bone thing and all of that. It seems like another government sponsored committee that's going to maybe help convene other committees and local organizations. Wait until after your comprehensive plan is done, because you may not need it. And then the last one was, you need to give more than a 1-year lease to that boatyard or any commercial person working there. Emmy Dunning, I knew him. He'd die all over again if he knew that property was not being championed for waterfront use, and nobody can run a business with no certainty for a year. So please consider, Councilor Smith and others, of extending that lease, getting it signed, and it should be at least multi-year. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
Can I just make one final comment?
Sure.
In terms of the gun conversation we're having tonight, I just want to echo something Councilor Smith said earlier, is it's been really nice to have conversations with folks who have had issues or concerns on both sides. And I know this format doesn't really allow for that conversation. And so I'm glad to hear folks' feedback and thoughts on this, but I also want to encourage everyone in this room that I know I personally try to be very accessible and have found it to be very fulfilling to have more one-on-one conversations with people about this as well. So my information, council information, is all on the website. I know I try and respond to pretty much every email I get. So I encourage you, please, I want to have these conversations. So thank you.
All right, we'll give one more chance if anybody would like to come forward for public comment on a non-agenda item. Before we move on, last thing I want to do is cut off public participation and communication between the general public and the council. That's something we strive for to keep improving. All right, I don't see any hands going up. Councilor Smith?
Just because there have been 2 mentions of the dog bone committee, I want to be clear that no one is trying to ban dog bones. I don't want there to be any confusion about that.
So we'll move on to our action items on the agenda as our next segment. These are the elements that the council actually takes action on. And we start with something called a consent agenda. But before we get to that, I'd like to ask for a motion to amend and suspend our rules in order to move an item up on the agenda, specifically item number 209-24, that we move it to immediately subsequent to the consent agenda so that the applicant for that item can get addressed and get back to personal matters at home.
So moved.
Seconded.
All those in favor of moving item 209-24 to immediately preceding the consent agenda?
Aye.
All right, great. We've suspended those rules. So the consent agenda is full of a number of different appointments and some acceptance of funds, donations, And is there anything on there in particular that anybody wishes to take off of the consent agenda for specific discussion? Not seeing any. Be it ordered that the August 6th, 2024 consent agenda be adopted.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any further conversation? All those in favor?
Aye.
Great. Hey, Ken, I appreciate the effort to keep the noise down, but as a public meeting, we actually have to keep the doors open, or at least one of them. Sorry.
Let's close.
Yeah, and if we're having trouble with noise, maybe we can just move folks down the hall a little bit for exterior conversations. All right, so that is the consent agenda. Joyce, would you please step up? We're going to hear about item number 209-24. And I'll read it just to get it into the record. Be it ordered that a Momentum Grant recipient be allowed to set up a gaming table and cornhole game stations at Memorial Park, and furthermore, to appropriate $2,000 in additional matching ARPA funds for the project.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Joyce.
So I thought a little 5-card stud would be a good thing in the Memorial Park to help draw people in. So I went in for a Momentum Grant, asking that we set up one picnic table size with a wheelchair accessible end that would have 2 game boards embedded into their concrete, so that you could play chess or checkers, and there's 2 of them, so you can have little mini tournaments. I asked for a particular style and concrete ones because it's actually about 1,700 pounds, so it won't walk away. It will need a concrete pad to put it on, and I think Earl, wherever he went,
Right there.
has that under control. The second item is cornhole toss sets, 2 of them, so that again, there could be little mini tournaments. They are also concrete. They're specially designed to keep bicycles from using them as ramps and to keep skateboarders from using the corners as a slide area. They also have concrete pads on either side, so when you're doing a tournament, you're on the pad, you're not stepping over, there's no cheating. And I have met with the organizers of the Friday market, and we've come up with locations that will not disturb their activities either. They were quite excited about it because it'll give the children and the husbands and people that aren't shopping and might want to hang around for a little bit, something to do besides climb the monument. That's basically it.
Joyce, can I ask a question? Is there a proposed some sort of a lightweight cover over this to enjoy this maybe on slightly less
So
than 70
there's
days?
no cover over the cornhole. In fact, we picked an area where there's going to be the most open.
I meant the game board, sorry.
There's a natural tree cover.
Okay. Great. Questions for Joyce? Darrell?
I think on your presentation to the municipal facilities, the table and the cornhole are treated so graffiti can easily be removed if there is any. So that's a very positive.
Yeah, they've got a special sealer that they put 2 coats on so that if it does get tagged, it can get washed off fairly easily.
Would there be maintenance needed for that? Just out of curiosity. Like every couple years, we have to reapply it?
They said no.
Okay, cool.
Probably not a bad idea, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love to paint, so. Yes. Yeah, granite would be a lot more expensive than
does
poured
look,
concrete.
though, yeah, it does look, it's a very smooth concrete, so I think it looks much more like marble than concrete from the photos that Joyce showed us. I think that's part of the sealant.
Mhm.
But
Dan?
Joyce, can you just talk about the money? So it looks like a $2,815 momentum grant, 2,000 you're requesting from ARPA, and the total is about 6,000 for the project?
So I originally went in asking for about $2,400, and the committee that approves the grants liked the idea, so they gave me $5,000. And then in order to do a double table so that you could have the tournaments and with the shipping and the extra for the sealer, it came out to $6,000.
So do you only need 1,000 from ARPA then, if they give you 5?
And then
for
a little
momentum?
bit more for Mr. Earl for the cement pad.
Okay. Got it. Follow-up question for Sophie. Is there anywhere else we could take the $2,000 from that's not ARPA?
Earl says no. I don't know of any, which is why I suggested ARPA. But I can look again. We also have the auditors here finalizing the end of last year, so that could be something there. I think an approval, we can always change the source if we find money. That would be an option too.
Looks like we're about to save $3,500 on a new vehicle lift. Even under budget. But I don't want to.
So we can-
You can't.
Categories
Trust
quite
that
that-
you'll look and see if there's another source.
And Joyce, also what you shared with municipal facilities was that some of this money is money that's already been donated to this project that you've been fundraising as well. Just part of the offset.
Great. Not surprised. Broad community support, brilliant idea, perfect execution. Any other questions for Joyce? Or the item?
Just a note of thanks to say this is exactly what we had, the type of thing we had in mind when we created the Momentum Grant Program and the type of activation we wanted to see downtown at the park. So,
You'll
yay.
be all welcome to come to the Legion's first tournament for cornhole next spring.
I'll be there.
All right, so that's the item been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I was just going to suggest a small change in the wording to be a game table rather than a gaming table, just so there's no confusion about that.
Okay.
Or a games table.
We'll make that correction in the minutes. Chris, yeah. All right, great. All right, so with that out of the way, we'll move on to our action items. This evening, we're going to be having 2 public hearings, and for September 3rd, we're going to be setting 5 public hearings. Drink your coffee before that meeting. And we're going to be announcing some bid awards, and that's largely what's on the rest of the agenda with a couple of other things. So we'll try and move through that so we can get to all of the comments on public hearings and explanations of the upcoming hearings. All right, our first public hearing is item number 19. We already voted on the consent agenda,
This
right?
is the consent agenda. That's the consent agreement for the property.
Oh, yeah, that's what I'm starting on.
Oh, sorry, I thought, sorry.
It's a public hearing.
Yeah.
The next, first item is a public hearing, item number 197-24, and it's to consider action relative to a consent agreement for property located at 114 Hunter Road. We're going to open a public hearing, but before we do that, we want to get the item on the table. So, Councilor Pillsbury, could you please read the bid order?
Bid order that a consent agreement for property located at 114 Hunter Road be approved.
All right, so that introduces the item. Thank you.
Right, second.
Second. It's been moved and seconded. We're going to open the public hearing. If anyone wishes to make comments about the proposed consent agreement at 114 Hunter Road, this would be your time to talk to the council, express your views. We're not going to take any action until we hear from the public well, assuming that there is some public hearing. We won't make any action before we hold the public hearing, let's say it that way. So we'd like to hear from you if you have comments about this particular item before we move forward with it. Consent agreements, just for context, are generally an agreement between a property owner and the municipality that there were challenges with some sort of zoning or lot lines or something to do with property boundaries usually, and structures that may have been constructed thereof, which may be very hard to undo, even though there may be existing violations. So the consent agreement process is to allow a property owner to come forward and say, this doesn't comply, but I can't like take the concrete out of the ground. So we go through a process of consent agreements to sort of ride over that, and that allows future property owners to not be inheriting or buying violations going forward. That's the purpose of the consent agreement. So, public hearing is open. Anyone wish to comment on the proposed consent agreement for 114 Hunter Road? All right, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing. That brings the item up to the council for discussion. We have a little bit of context, Sophie, on this particular item.
Good evening. Alex Uroy, code officer for the town. We have this draft document for you guys, which is still incomplete. You may have noticed if you had time to look at it. I know it came kind of last minute. There are some spots where information is missing. We are still waiting on information from the surveyor who is doing the work for this particular project. So that's a big part of this, obviously, especially the portion of it that's specific to the garage. I can give some background information.
Briefly, that'd be great.
Some
Thank
head
you.
nods. Yeah. So essentially, the Porters deeded some lots to their son, and he's here. Ben and Melissa are the ones that are bringing this forward. They would like to develop the middle lot at this point, at least, with a single-family home. When the lots were created and conveyed, it also included a right-of-way, because they're essentially back lots. And when that right-of-way was created, it created two violations, if you want to call it, on the front lot, on the parents' lot. And one of them is with lot area, because our zoning ordinance does not allow you to include land that's underneath the right-of-way as lot area. So because the lot was already essentially at the minimum lot size, when they split these lots, the land under that right-of-way put them below the minimum lot size required. So that's item number one.
Can I interrupt for just a second,
Yep.
Alex? Would it be a difference if it was an easement versus a right-of-way?
No.
It's the same?
Same idea, yeah.
Okay.
And then, yep.
This is an odd ordinance in Freeport, correct?
It's not specific to Freeport.
So here's my question, and you probably can't answer that, but I think they're paying taxes on that property that they can't use. So this is for further discussion on our ordinances.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
when we say you can't
Thinking
use
the
it, but
exact
what, we're
same
gonna
thing,
pay
yeah.
taxes, so.
Yeah.
It might get fixed.
Please continue, Alex. Sorry.
Fortunately, I don't have to deal with taxes or assessing, so I can't answer that one. So that issue is number one. So now that front lot is too small. And it was made too small through this creation. The second is kind of a two-parter. There's a garage on that front lot that was built sometime in the 90s. We can't find records of any permits being issued for the garage. And when the right-of-way was created later on to serve those back lots, it appears to have made the garage non-conforming because it's now within the setback. I don't think it was anything that was done intentionally. I believe it was an oversight. It was just one of those things that, they were creating a right-of-way to the back and they didn't realize that that setback line is now measured off that edge of the right-of-way. So those are the big issues here. They would like to get a building permit to build on this lot, and at this point, some of the other methods and ways that we can correct the issues, I think, would be kind of cost prohibitive and would be challenging with that right-of-way and it already being in place. That's, I think, the path of least resistance for them. So that's kind of why that request is now in front of you guys.
Alex, one more question. When the lot is divided, anybody making a division of lots to create a buildable lot, for instance, in the back, and the creation of that easement, is there a follow-up after the permission is granted for the division to actually have somebody from the town look at that, say,
No, so, and that's a great question. We get that one a lot.
homeowners making an accommodation for an easement, but actually not hearing that that's creating a violation when they did it, so, okay.
Unless the lot's in a subdivision, a town-approved subdivision, there is no municipal approval when someone creates a lot. You can just have
hole in our
survey done or record a deed.
Process, for sure.
Yeah.
A trapdoor setup in my,
Yeah.
but, anyway. Yeah.
Couple of questions. What's the total size of the 3 lots? Is it bigger than 7.5 acres?
Yes, I believe so. They have enough land to do three lots. And so that's the other part of this is the surveyor is going to essentially plot out a conveyance from Lot 2 back to Lot 1 to correct that issue. But as of right now, we still have it in this agreement because we haven't seen that come from the surveyor. But I believe, and they can speak on that, I believe the intent at this point is to comply with that by conveying some land back.
So that, then we wouldn't need this piece of the consent agreement if that works, to say, here's a 1/10 of an acre, we're going to put it
Correct.
back in Lot 1
Yep.
from Lot 2, okay?
The attorney's suggestion was that that is done before everything else, so that we have that portion, you know, that deed saying this is being conveyed from, you know, this lot to this lot.
Makes sense.
Alex, do you have a sense of what the expense is for the surveyor to create that new line?
I don't know. So, you know, the surveyor's working with them on this project, and I don't know what that cost will be.
Second question is about the garage. A lot of times the setback issues or after-the-fact stuff can be dealt with at the Board of Appeals. Is there a reason they didn't go that way?
So for an existing structure, you can't really get a setback variance.
At all, ever?
Because you have to meet hardship criteria, and it would be, I think personally, it would be impossible to meet the hardship criteria, but that's up for interpretation by the ZBA based on what the applicant submits. So they could go through that process, but it would be costly, and I am 99% sure that they probably wouldn't get what they want. That process now is designed for a different situation.
Got it. Okay. Just a comment, Chip, you and I and Matt have talked about this at ordinance, regardless of the specific consent agenda, just the discussion around right-of-ways and easements taking away from the lot size area. We had a fairly lengthy discussion at ordinance, and I think we said we wanted to hear from the planning board. It deserved more thoughtful discussion because there are a lot of interesting issues there, taxes being one of them. So we have that on the radar, but I don't want that to stand in the way of what we got tonight. So just wanted to offer that.
No, and this, I think this consent decree is to allow them to start building while they're rectifying the other issues so that they can have a house here soon. And it's another house in Maine or in Freeport, so.
Yeah. But to that point, the house is on Lot 2 though, right? The intended house to build is on Lot 2.
Yes.
The consent agreement is fixing the stuff on Lot 1. So is this standing in the way of them building on Lot 2?
Yes.
Correct. They can't build on Lot 2 until they fix Lot 1?
Correct.
Yeah. Can't get a building permit with a standing violation.
On a different lot though.
Right, but the right-of-way created an
It's the right of way
easement.
that's causing the problem.
Yeah, and since there's some land that most likely will be conveyed from that middle lot to the front lot, I think it's best to have it cleared up
Okay, I
first.
see.
Other questions for Alex?
Can I, oh,
I just have a more general question, and it's a process question, because as you said, Alex, the consent agreement is actually not done. So we got a very late draft, but I'm not sure how we're voting on it if it's not complete. But it's here and it's up for a vote. So maybe, Sophie, you can address that?
so the thing that makes it incomplete are very clear-cut, objective meets and bounds feet that need to be put in for a survey. So you could condition it on that. The other blanks in this are in section 3, where we talk about the amount of money that needs to be paid to the town. I realize it is our normal process to charge for the town legal fees and usually another type of fee, fine. In this particular case, I find that I am concerned that we didn't say they didn't get a building permit. We said we couldn't find one. There is a distinction there that I think council needs to hear. When I pay attention to the amount of money that they are paying out right now for surveyors, my recommendation would be that we consider either something very low or waiving the cost with this. I will also say this hit my radar not long after I got here, but my sense is that the property owners have been trying to fix this with the town for a significant amount of time.
I also, and I very much appreciate your effort to sort of remedy this the best you can. I also want to call attention that we received emails from a few of the abutters that were supportive of the neighbors, but were concerned because they didn't have time to review the document they were sent since it was so late. And I think one person said, I very well may be supportive of the agreement, but I have not had time to understand it because it was received late.
I think I heard that. I am trying to balance a need to get housing for some folks that are having a housing issue. But I think the important piece to have today is the public hearing. You may want to speak with the applicant about the timeline if you were to move this forward to give a couple more weeks to fill in the rest and have people speak, but it's an option.
Yeah, with our schedule, that'd be almost a month. Which seems unnecessary. Darrell?
So with an amendment that would authorize the town manager, if we were voting to support this, so we know we get the proper survey done on the property or whatever, I think the other thing that needs to be heard, this has been going on, has it been 2 years? 4 years. So they've been more than patient, and I'm glad that the manager has brought this forward in a quick and timely manner, but it's been 4 years. So I would like, if we need to amend this to give permission for them to move forward with the approval of the manager pending the survey of the property, maybe we need to add that. But I'm not very confident that either way, the thing will be done properly.
I certainly don't want to add any time to this. I guess my concern really is the process of, if we have a public hearing and we advertise a public hearing, but we don't give anybody notice to review what we're having a public hearing about, it's not much of a public hearing. So we had a public hearing, but we didn't really give anyone any notice of what we were reviewing, unless they showed up and they picked up the incomplete draft that was on the table. So that's my concern. But I'm certainly not going to try to push this any further in terms of time frame.
This public hearing was set on July 16th.
But the documents weren't sent to abutters until maybe yesterday, which is not enough time to understand a complex legal document.
Dan?
What's the timing of the survey and the potential conveyance of Lot 2 to Lot 1? Is that already in motion and likely to be completed in the next couple of weeks?
Yeah, so, part of this, the challenge here has been, I talked to the surveyor last week of June, and he had told me 2 weeks we'd have everything we needed. So that's why the public hearing was set for this meeting, because we thought that would leave plenty of time. And unfortunately, last week I spoke with him on Wednesday, and he told me he would get it. I was expecting by the end of the week, and it's been a week and I still don't have it. So, we want to try and make every intent possible to move this thing forward. It's kind of out of our control at this point. But we did send abutter notices to abutters within 500 feet. And I think probably the same people reached out to me. I've had a few people send me emails. And we sent that out on I believe, yesterday. The attorney that assisted with drafting this requested that we didn't make it public until we had all the information. And essentially the conversation last week was, we're going to have to send it out with what we have.
So if that transfer is successful, that conveyance, we would remove a couple of the paragraphs from the consent agreement.
Exactly. Yeah, which is why he didn't want it to really be put out until we had that information, because there were some changes that he wanted to make to it, to make it accurate.
So I'd like to propose an amendment to the motion that the council delegate final execution of consent agreement pending review from Alex and the town manager, with the proviso that there are no substantial or meaningful opposition from the abutters who may have not had a chance to see it. It is a public hearing. But I'd like to move that so that it doesn't have to come back here almost a month from now, so that we can get this moving and these folks can get going on their work. So let's see, to phrase that.
Before you get there, would you also add a counselor to that mix? So Alex, the town manager, and at least a counselor, just to
sure.
that public participation part?
So I'd like to amend the motion to be it ordered that a consent agreement which shall be finalized upon final approval of a town councilor, the manager, and the planner for a property located at 114 Hunter Road be approved, and that the execution of such does not have to come back to the council.
I'll second that, and I'd like to be the counselor on that, as it is my district.
Perfect.
And I don't think this needs to be part of the motion, but I would voice support for what the manager said in terms of keeping the fee.
Correct.
At low,
Want to add that in there,
low
yeah.
to no fee.
Zero, yeah. Including a waiver of requiring the property owner to pay legal fees.
Second.
Great. All right, so there's our amended motion. We have to vote on the amendment, and then we'll take a vote on the final motion. All those in favor of the amendment?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so the motion is, as was just stated, I'm not going to read it again, to delegate execution of the consent agreement to the manager, the planner, and Councilor Chip Lawrence, final review after the details are available from the surveyor. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
She was trying to.
I was going to ask a question.
Interrupted my vote.
Sorry.
No.
More a comment, just to be clear that I think maybe Sophie can respond, or someone can respond to these abutters who did request more time, so they're aware that it's moving, but you have time. Yeah, okay.
I
I was a yes.
Yes.
I think I
Six to one, Chris.
received 2 emails.
Yes.
That's it, all right, because in the public comment issue, I think I received 2 emails, not a lot, so I just want to make sure I have everybody.
I received 2 as well. I think we all did.
Also,
You
this
can be
is.
on your way.
Huh? Yeah. And this is all more of an administrative thing than actually changing a whole lot of land use or anything like that, so it's.
Okay, thanks for your patience. I know it's probably stretched like this thin. Hopefully this moves it forward. Thanks very much. All right, our next item on the agenda is another public hearing, number 198-24. Councilor Fournier, could you please read the item, and then we'll open the public hearing.
Item is consider action relative to amending amendments to chapter 17 electrical code for the town of Freeport, public hearing. Oh, I'm sorry, thank you. Okay. Yes, consider action relative to amendments to chapter 17 electrical code for the town of Freeport.
Be it ordained.
And then I thought we had to, okay, and be it ordained, the amendments to chapter 17 electrical code for the town of Freeport be approved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All right, so this is a public hearing on amendments to Chapter 17 of our electrical code. Anyone wish to make comments in a public hearing for amendments to Chapter 17?
So, Nick was here at our last meeting when you called the public hearing because he couldn't be here tonight.
We talked about it, but we didn't vote on it last time. That's what I'm remembering. Okay, thanks.
All right, I don't see any hands up, so we're going to go ahead and close the public hearing and take conversation up to the council. Any discussion on this item?
If I remember correctly, this is just making sure we are compliant with the most up-to-date standards
So,
for the state.
yeah, we are allowed to have an electrical code. However, it has to meet the state's electrical code, and they just changed the year of the electrical code that they're going by, so we need to do the same thing.
So it is really, quite truly 2020 crossed out and changed into 2023?
Yep.
Okay, just checking.
And the bottom part of that memo details the differences between 2020 and 2023, what those changes are, which we're incorporating in by changing the year.
Other comments, clarifications? All right, all those in favor of adopting the amendments to Chapter 17 of the Electrical Code?
Aye.
Any opposed? 7-0. All right, so next on our agenda, we're going to be setting five public hearings for September 3rd. The first one is item number 199-24. Again, setting public hearings. We're going to have a little bit of context about what these are so that people know what's coming in 3 weeks, or 4 weeks, 3 weeks. The actual decision and debate about anything that's listed in the item will actually happen on September 3rd. So we're just setting the public hearing. There is a chance if people have questions, you can approach the podium and we can answer those. But the public hearing itself is going to be on September 3rd. Councilor Lawrence just stepped out. All right. Councilor Benoit, could you please read the be it ordered and we'll get this going. Number 199-24.
Thank you. Be it ordered that a public hearing be set for September 3rd, 2024 at the council meeting starting at 6 p.m. in Town Council Chambers, 30 Main Street, Freeport, to discuss a new liquor license for Unidyne Corporation located at 15 Casco Street, Freeport. And that's the corporate offices for LLB.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any comments or contact? It's pretty self-explanatory. This is a renewal. I'm sorry, it's a new one. Sorry, mistake. Questions?
This will just be so that they don't have to pull catering permits. When they have events, they'll have their own liquor license.
For that,
LLB.
for those premises? Yep. Okay. All right. Any other questions or comments before we set the public hearing? All those in favor of item number 199-24 to set the public hearing and for September 3rd for a new liquor license for Unidyne Corporation?
Aye.
Favor? 7-0. Good timing, Chip. All right, our next item, our second setting of public hearing is item number 200-24, to consider action relative to setting a public hearing to discuss amendments to Chapter 50, which is the special amusement permits section of our land use ordinance. Councilor Smith, could you please read the be it ordered?
Be it ordered that a public hearing be set for September 3rd, 2024 at the council meeting starting at 6 p.m. in Town Council Chambers, 30 Main Street, Freeport, to discuss amendments to Chapter 50, special amusement permits to include staff review and approval of renewal applications deemed as acceptable by fire, rescue, and code enforcement, and who have met all other requirements of the ordinance.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Sophie, am I reading this right, that this would allow staff to make recommendations and approvals of special amusement permit renewals?
Some, I would like Chris to take it because she's done a lot of work on this.
Okay, great. Chris?
Okay, so I'm taking off my secretary hat. So the direction that we got from the council was to try to streamline processes and make things less restrictive for applicants and to ease the process, get some things out of council's agenda list. So the first thing we looked at was the special amusement permit. And right now, to recap, when a special amusement permit comes in, new or renewal, it comes to the town council for public hearing. So keeping in mind that any time that we're setting a public hearing, depending on our schedule, that can hold people back 4 to 6 weeks. So the proposal that we brought to the ordinance committee goes as follows. That the clerk's office will still receive the applications and forward to codes and to fire rescue for their normal inspections, which they've always done. We also, in the ordinance, added that the police department will review the special amusement because of the liquor license connection. We'll just touch in with them for staff approval. If all of those inspections come back as acceptable, the clerk will issue renewal permits. If the inspections don't all come back as acceptable, the applications will then come to the town council for review. So we kept that town council oversight in there. If council does decide to deny the permit at the council level, then we will go to a public hearing. So we kind of give them every chance before we go to the public hearing. What we will keep is that all new special amusement permits will continue to come to the town council for public hearing. So new ones get that additional review to start. This amendment that I made also corrected something that's kind of been haunting me, and that's that our ordinance, the way that we issue them now, according to our ordinance, doesn't align with state law. Special amusement permits are supposed to run concurrent with liquor licenses, and our ordinance says they're issued for a 1-year period. So this ordinance helps me get everyone into that proper license renewal so that it will run concurrent. That's all I have.
Chris, I have a question. Is upon the renewals where they're just going through staff departments, does the proposed change in the language put any kind of a time frame on how fast those move through the departments? Do we have you have 2 weeks as a department head to look at it or whatever it might be?
We did not add that, but that is something that we could easily put in.
I wouldn't dare presume what that time frame might be, but I think it's a really good idea for the general public to know that there is a time frame for which department heads can get back, particularly since the council isn't going to hear those. That puts a little more predictability and visibility on the process for the general public.
And what would be the recommendation? 2-3 weeks?
Well, I'm not here dealing with the flow of work, so it'd be just totally capricious for me to pick a time frame, but something quite reasonable, I guess, is all I would say. And have it be in weeks instead of months. That would be it.
Okay. Could we have some staff discussion and bring that back for the public hearing?
Sure. Right. Excellent pathway.
Daryl has a question.
I have a question on new applications. Why aren't we including them? Why would new applications have to come back to the council? Because we have a process. If they fail an inspection, then it will ultimately end up at the council if in fact they don't meet the ordinance, which I think is a great checks and balance. But if we're trying to be efficient and move a process through, that's not doing it.
When we went to ordinance committee, it was recommended at ordinance committee to leave public hearings for new ones so that they have that additional review.
Well, why?
Yeah, I think the idea, Daryl, is that if you're living next to a bar that serves alcohol and you're used to that for 5, 10, 15 years, and then all of a sudden they say, I want to start doing concerts and live music outside, just to make sure that there's a process where the public has an opportunity to show up at a public meeting to say, hey, here are some reasons I don't think it should happen. Because if it's just at the clerk and there's no sort of administrative offensive reason to not grant the permit, then it's automatically granted. So this just injects a little bit of public visibility into the process.
I think where I feel comfortable, when I used to sit on a very similar committee, they were public meetings and people were notified of the meetings ahead of time to help with that. And then if we keep the council, if it doesn't get approved, I just think we're adding another layer then I don't think we need to add. Or if we're trying to be efficient.
We're not removing that layer. It's already there.
Everything comes here. at
But
this point,
eventually, but we don't need, for new ones coming in,
Yeah.
I question why we have that hoop. But we can find out at a, public comment.
Any other questions for Chris or an explanation of what we're going to cover? I think that's an excellent idea to bring back recommendation from the staff about specific timing turnaround for the improved efficiency of staff review only for the renewals. All right, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor of setting the public hearing?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, 7-0. Our next public hearing to set is item number 201-24 to consider action relative to amendments to Chapter 61, the short-term rental registration ordinance. Councilor Pilch, could you please read the be it ordered?
Be it ordered that a public hearing be set for September 3rd, 2024 at the council meeting starting at 6 p.m. in Town Council Chambers, 30 Main Street, Freeport, to discuss amendments to Chapter 61, short-term rental registration ordinance, to allow for staff review and approval of new short-term registration rentals and renewals without changes or with code enforcement approved changes, and to require the police department to report annually any complaints received for the prior registration year.
Second.
All right, been moved and seconded to set this public hearing. Any comments? Chris, do you want to give us just a little bit of explanation on this one?
Yeah. So right now, the way the process works is that code enforcement and the clerk's staff review and approve all new short-term rentals. They do not come to the council. Renewals are reviewed and adopted by the town council. So right now, you have complete staff review on new short-term rentals. All renewals are the applications are supposed to be reviewed annually by the town council and then approved. So what I would propose to ease this process is that annually, prior to the re-registration period in March, code enforcement and police provide a list of complaints they've received for the prior year. So codes would get any code complaints, police get noise complaints. So that's why we added in the police complaint to the, that they would report to us annually. Currently, just codes does that. The renewals that have complaints would come to the town council for review. So, in approval. Renewals with changes to the property go to the code enforcement review and then come to the clerk's office for issuance. So we would just eliminate the town council having to review the renewals. Renewals without complaints or changes, so just a straight, they just want to renew their short-term rental, the clerk's office will make sure they meet all their administrative pieces, and then we would just approve those. So.
Great, thank you. Empowering staff do their jobs. It's been moved and seconded. Any other discussion about setting this public hearing on renewals of short-term rental registrations? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? 7-0. Two more. Our fourth setting of a public hearing is item number 202-24 to consider action relative to setting a public hearing about amendments to Chapter 43, which is the Public Peddlers Ordinance. Chip, you were out of the room last time, so would you mind reading this one?
Sure. Be it ordered that a public hearing be set for September 3rd, 2024 at the council meeting starting at 6 p.m. in Town Council Chambers, 30 Main Street, Freeport, to discuss amendments to Chapter 43 Public Peddlers Ordinance to allow for staff review and approval in certain situations, to change yearly review of locations to the Municipal Facilities Committee, and to allow for the manager to extend the permitting season end date.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Chris, this is pretty self-explanatory, but you want to just give us a little bit of context?
Sure. So right now, the clerk's office receives the public peddler applications in January. We send them to the police department for review, and then they have to come to the town council. So what we propose is if the chief's report is acceptable to issue, then the clerk will continue the process, gather the required documents, conduct the lottery, and issue the permits. It won't have to come for the town council nod. If the chief's report, however, is unacceptable to issue, the application will be forwarded to the town council for approval or denial. The other thing that we changed in this ordinance was that annually, the traffic and parking is supposed to review our 4 locations. It was suggested to us that that go to the Municipal Facilities Committee instead. And lastly, the last change that we made was we have one public peddler that likes to stay through Sparkle. So our ordinance ends at our term in November, so we gave Sophie the authority to extend it if the weather is okay, and it looks like. So those were the changes to peddler.
Great. Any questions for Chris before we set the public hearing in 3 weeks?
I just have a clarification. Within the definitions of this ordinance, the peddler is a person offering or selling any tangible commodity, but the licensing is only for food. And I know we've had some inquiries about what does it mean if you wanted to be a peddler for something other than food.
Hats.
Right, and I know this proposal isn't changing that, but that is, I think, a question that is going to come up more for folks that want to have sort of pop-up sales for all kinds of things. Of course, we do special activity permits for Makers on Main, for example, and Sparkle, and all kinds of, in Fall Festival, where you have people on both public and private property selling things, and that's within the special activity permit. This just strikes me as one of those things that harkens back to the 80s, like the newspaper vending machines, and I'm just wondering if there might be some other look at this ordinance or some other ordinance than that. I understand we'll have to go back to the ordinance committee.
Sophie?
If I could just recommend that if we want to make more changes, given where we are in the season anyway, this might make sense to refer back to ordinance to do complete work, if that's what everybody wants to do, as opposed to amend it and then turn around and amend it again.
Doesn't this one kind of deals with a very special
It does.
type of ordinance because it's dealing with public facilities and particular food, right? I mean,
Yes.
that's what this is dealing with, so maybe it's time we need, do I say it? An ordinance to allow something like clothing or that kind of thing, and not necessarily this ordinance.
Well, and that's why I bring up the definition, is because this, in essence, is about all peddlers peddling anything, and yet we're saying we will only license food. So it's almost like you can't do another ordinance if by definition this ordinance encompasses everything, but we're not allowing anything but food. And I didn't know if you wanted to give any background to that, Chris, or anything that where you think that goes in another ordinance?
I have not given it
Okay.
the thought. I know that in the actual ordinance, it does spell out that this is just for the sale of food, even though maybe the definition doesn't support that. It says tangible items, but then when you get into 43-201, specifically for the sale of food items,
Right.
only in those food items. So we'd really have to change the ordinance to allow
Yeah, I mean,
non-food items.
in essence, this ordinance prohibits any essentially pop-up shop or retailing of anything other than food on public property through this
Is it-
licensing process.
Is it doing that, or is it saying this ordinance is particularly for food?
Yeah, I'm not sure it's prohibiting a non-food item. The reason why there's a license is because service of food to the public requires a license.
Right.
But if you were to be selling hats, I think you could fit under this. You could fit under this, and you wouldn't need a license. You don't need a license to sell a hat. You could be a peddler and come in and apply.
I think part of what you should keep in mind too is this is just referring to the 4 spots that the town owns. By the train station in front of Town
True,
Hall
okay.
and the 2 spots behind Starbucks.
Just on,
So designated as food.
as
space.
food, right, okay, that's why it's very specific, yep.
But we
thank you.
also have a peddlers on private property ordinance, or we did, and it's the same, essentially. It's the same definition.
So that's the one that needs to be changed.
Well,
say.
I will just bring up the fact that municipal facilities had an application come to us at that last meeting.
Yes, the last meeting, yep.
Where we essentially, in short order, allowed someone to be a vendor on public property for a one-time only date, because there was no other place for that to come, because it couldn't be approved by the clerk's office because it doesn't meet this definition. So that's where I'm trying to say, how do we address that in a way that isn't just on an ad hoc basis?
So the way we addressed it for this one is it's coming through to you as a temporary use,
Yep.
not as a public peddler.
Yeah. And that's where, again, I think that's,
Right, but, yeah, but this one just deals with these 4 places and food.
Eric brings up a good point, because it does say it shall be unlawful for any person to engage in the business of peddler as defined in Article 1 within the corporate limits of the town of Freeport without first obtaining a license. But then we only grant license. So I see what you're saying, and I think it does need more work. I don't think we're making it any worse by the other changes we're making, so I would support making those changes and going back and
and I
making further
think,
changes.
I think the point of this ordinance too, and those particular spots is that we have essentially decided those 4 spots are essentially for food vendors, period, and that's fine. But I am just bringing up the fact that by definition, we're also blocking anybody else from coming to us for a license on any other spot.
For a long period of time, for more than a temporary time.
Right, I mean, so nobody can come and apply to be a seasonal shop.
Right.
On a corner that we own. They have to be vending food. That's the only thing they can do. So I'm not standing in the way of this going to public hearing, and I agree with you, Sophie, if we were gonna change it more, I don't think we need to change it more. I do think we need a comprehensive peddler's ordinance.
Yeah.
That defines that, much as it is defined. But this language, I believe, has mostly been there since the 80s.
So have our ordinances.
Yeah, so, and so I just think in terms of reinvigorating the downtown, being open to new styles of business, I think that deserves a look. But I don't see any reason this can't go to public hearing.
Okay. Ordinance Committee has some homework for later. All right, we've had a lot of conversation. Everybody ready to vote for the setting the public hearing? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. 202-24 passes 7-0. Our last public hearing to set for September 3rd is to consider action relative to setting a public hearing for new special amusement permit. In particular, I'll read it. Be it ordered that a public hearing be set for September 3rd, 2024 at the council meeting starting at 6 p.m. in Town Council Chambers, 30 Main Street, Freeport, to discuss a new special amusement permit for Brickyard Hollow located at 20 Bow Street.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any comments or questions about this one? We're just setting the public hearing for a new permit, which we do routinely. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, 7-0. Public hearing has been set. Okay, on to bid awards. Our next item is item number 204-24, to consider action relative to awarding a bid for a forklift Back to Matt. Please read the be it ordered.
Sure. Be it ordered that Butch Craig Inc. and Sons, Auburn, Maine, be awarded the bid for a forklift for Public Works in the amount of $29,465.
Second.
All right, been moved and seconded. Earl, please give us some context.
This was approved in our capital budget for this year, and we went out to bid, and this is our bid numbers that come back. Excuse me. We are $3,500 under budget, but please keep that in mind before we go to the next item. Yes.
This one's over budget, right?
Yeah, this one's over.
Budget one first.
We're on 204, Earl. The forklift is over.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Yeah, I wished I was under budget on that one.
But your permission for grace was noted.
Yes. I was setting that up. This is replacing a 34-year-old forklift. We have pushed this back since I've been here. It's finally got to the point where we couldn't buy parts for it.
It doesn't owe us anything, huh?
Yes. It's well served for town of Freeport. Yeah, go there.
My only question is, the two-stage going to give you enough height to do what we want, as opposed to a three-stage?
It is a three-stage.
You're going with a three-stage on here?
Yeah, we went with the street.
Okay, good.
I'm actually glad you brought that up, Mr. Earl. The low bid item was going to have to be ordered, and it was a two-stage. He had the three-stage sitting on the floor, and I asked him if he would commit to the same price on that because he's having to pay taxes on it because it's sitting on his property. He agreed. So we actually ended up with a three-stage forklift.
Which is a better piece of equipment.
It is very much in the shop. As you know, we're getting ready to build the public works room so you can put stuff up in that storage very safely.
Thank you.
Well done, Earl. Other questions, Matt?
Are we still getting the $2,000 rebate?
Yes, that was, reluctantly, I'm going to say that I agreed to purchase this and before that date expired, so that give us the $2,000 bonus, or rebate, as you said. So, I will mention it is $4,465 over budget.
But it's a three-stage.
It's three-stage.
At the same price as the two-stage, so.
The one that I jumped forward, we saved $3,500 on that. And talking with Jessica, it's going to be a total expense of $965, which will go out of the operating budget.
Awesome.
Earl, what's the fuel? Is that propane?
Propane. Yeah, it has to be propane because it's in this forklift, I should mention that it's not an outdoor forklift. This is inside the building. So anything inside the building has to be electric or propane. And we have propane sensors everywhere.
Sometime I'll come and talk to you about the evolution and coming along of electric forklifts. Love to know where
And
those
I'll
are.
talk to you about regular propane. So we got a discussion here,
I'll
Mr.
let
Chair.
you two talk first. So,
If you want to look at electric forklifts, you can go to the LL Bean Order Fulfillment Center and the massive machine they have in order to change the batteries on the electric forklift. That would be
Well-
a good.
That's why I want to have a conversation to learn more.
Okay.
Well, also, hopefully this one lasts 30 years, 34 years. So
it's lasted 34 years.
we'll see. Well, hopefully this new one will as well, so.
I hope so. It'll
We'll be
last
going
me.
outside, right, in the rain.
All right, well, makes it pretty easy to vote for purchase at slightly over the budget amount when you did so well in the negotiation. All right, any other questions for Earl? It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor of purchasing the forklift?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Actually, as a purchasing, it's awarding the bid, right?
All right, don't go far. Earl, our next item is item number 205-24. Consider action relative to awarding a bid for vehicle lift for Public Works. Councilor Fournier, could you please read the bid order?
Be it ordered that Automotive Garage 2 Wyndham be awarded the bid for a vehicle lift for Public Works in the amount of $29,500.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Now you can brag about the
Yes,
price.
I should say the lift that was budgeted and approved, is the lift that does the small lifting on the police cruisers and the pickups and things like that. Being that we have and I laugh at this, 1.5 mechanic, I've got a half-time mechanic now. When they're both working on vehicles at the same time, it gives them the capability of doing that, not having to wait on the lift to free up. This is replacing one that we've had, I think that one's 12 years old.
Any site work to the building, or does the elements of the lift come in and out of the building?
It'll go right back. It's designed to be the same one or a newer one, but everything goes right back in the same spot.
Great. Questions for Earl on a vehicle lift at Public Works? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 7-0. Thank you, Earl. All right, our last bid award is item number 206-24, to consider action relative to awarding a bid for a 2025 Ford Interceptor Cruiser for the Police Department. Councilor Lawrence, could you please read the bid order?
Certainly. Be it ordered that Casco Bay Ford, Yarmouth, Maine, be awarded the bid for a new 2025 Ford Interceptor for the Police Department in the amount of $48,657.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Welcome, Chief.
Hello.
Do you care to comment on where the capital budget was and your negotiation skills on how you did while Earl's still sitting in the room?
Well, the good news is the price of cruisers since COVID has actually come down.
Wow.
But the price of outfitting and electronics and the things that go inside them has crept up. So it's going to probably end up being a net wash. But, you know, things are trending in different directions now, post-COVID. So, well, post-COVID for us.
Is it the same vendor that we're buying the vehicle from that does the fit up of the equipment?
Oh, no. That's where things get interesting. There's about between Western Massachusetts and Northern Maine, there's about 7 places that outfit emergency police vehicles. And we've been in talks with all of them. So scheduling's an issue, finding the equipment, finding the right price point, finding the right labor charge. So we shop that around every year. We shop that around to try to find the best deal.
You feel you have enough room in your budget to be able to make an executed decision to get the thing timely?
We've had talks about this, about trending upward in the next few years to make some adjustments for some of the labor increases that we're seeing. But we're holding the line right now. But it's shaky for sure.
So for this year, we're confident that we'll be able to get it outfitted and on the road in a timely fashion.
Yeah.
It will impact what we see in terms of minor changes to the capital plan moving forward. Yeah, Nate drives a pretty hard bargain. He does not like to spend money.
Yeah.
My last question, Chief, is this replacing a vehicle, retiring it, or does it just move down the line off service duty?
Yeah, the answer to your question, yes. Much like last year when we took the vehicle that came offline and had that devoted to our alternative response caseworker, which we've seen great results with, by the way. This vehicle is going to end up being shuffled to a secondary role, but with fire department administrative staff. So it's going to stay within public safety, and we're just going to shuffle roles a little bit with the vehicle. So PD will make 2 internal shuffles, and then we're going to do an external one to fire department. So we're going to put it to good use.
Darrell?
2 questions. I would love to see one time that the fire department could give you a secondhand vehicle. That was always my goal, but I don't know, that's a discussion for another day. On another serious note, and I don't know if this is possible, when you look at the conversions for police cruisers, we have the same issue for rescues, fire apparatus, plow trucks are starting to get to that point. Is it time we look at looking to get someone in-house? Earl just discussed that we've got a part-time person that came in to assist on the mechanical aspects, but maybe thinking outside the box, would it be wise to have someone trained, because this is very technical work, as you know, and that could be disposed of us, not only to handle the police, but actually a whole fleet, because electronics are becoming more and more crucial and more complicated. I don't know, but if that's maybe a discussion for a later date.
Daryl, I'm not sure I understand you, but you talk about having in-house capacity to outfit the vehicle, is that what you mean?
Yeah, what I'm wondering is.
Instead of farming it out to a vendor.
Yeah, if we could have someone specialized in that, they need specialized training, but I think it would probably pay us huge dividends on troubleshooting and on transferring stuff over. Something we may want to look at.
Dan?
What was the amount that was reserved in the budget for the police cruiser?
I'm gonna have to look, sorry. Because in my mind, there's the amount, the total amount. Out of that total amount, we have to source the car and then the equipment and labor to change it over. So $60,000 for this year.
And of that, do you know how much was roughly allocated for the car versus the outfitting? Like, are we over or under?
Yeah, well, 48,000 and 48,500 will buy the car. And then the last 11.5 will go to outfitting it and labor.
So Chief, I think the question is, when you put that budget together,
Yeah.
how much did you expect the car to cost?
Thank you.
Oh, well, yeah. It's been so volatile the last 2 or 3 years that one of the few things I've had to appear before council for is vehicle-specific requests. I came before you last year to get extra money because I believe last year we paid $55,000 per car for 2 cars. So this year we're at $48,000 for 1 vehicle. So we're paying less for the vehicle, but the cost to outfit them and change them over went up almost by the same amount that we saved. So it's when I say it's volatile, it's very flip-flop.
So were you expecting about 50,000 for the vehicle and about 10,000 for the outfit when you put the prices together?
That's what we had been budgeting on.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's, yeah.
Yep. Still 60 for the total.
Any other questions for the chief? All right, all those in favor of the bid award to Casco Bay Ford for the police interceptor cruiser, item number 206-24, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. Thank you, chief. Thanks for staying in here for the long haul. All right, our next item is item number 207-24. To consider action relative to the creation of a transit-oriented development dog bone work group with the idea that there would eventually be a transit-oriented development district endorsed by this town council on April 23rd, related to council item number 126-24. Kind of forgetting where we are. Is that me? Back to Matt? No. Chip?
I'll do it, but, yeah.
It is my turn, technically.
Oh, it's, okay,
But
sorry,
you're the
Joanne.
town council on the.
I am, so you want to take it? I don't care.
Be it ordered, be it ordered that the Dogbone Work Group charter and timeline be endorsed as presented, and that the following representatives be appointed to the Dogbone Work Group. Town Councilor Joanna Benoit, Planning Board Representative Mitch Rauda, Planning Board Representative Wayne Jointner, Complete Streets Representative Kim True, Sustainability Advisory Board Representative Mandana McPherson, Freeport Economic Development Corp. Representative Tawny Whitney, Assistant Town Manager Caroline Pelletier, Development Director Brett Richardson, and the Town Planner.
Second.
Brett, you want to step up and just give us a little context about what the group is going to focus on and how long they'll be around?
Sure. Brett Richardson, Development Director for the town. The Dogbone Work Group came out of work from the Housing Task Force, work from the Economic Development Corporation, and really took its roots from the Downtown Vision Plan. The dog bone geography, as a reminder, we had a good conversation on April 23rd, but the dog bone work group, the dog bone geography, rather, entails most of downtown. It's within a quarter mile of the bus and train stations downtown, so if you overlap those, they complete the entire downtown and they form one end of the dog bone. The other end of the dog bone is the Breeze Stop in front of Maine Beer Company, so roughly a mile from downtown. And then the middle part of the bone is Route 1, a corridor down Route 1 that meshes up with the downtown vision catchment area for housing development. If you were to live in that area, that would be a 20-minute walk from the furthest distance or a 5-minute bike ride. And it could really help us focus our investment around infrastructure, our planning around land use, and our use of financial incentives to reach the community's housing goals in a tight geography that will advance foot traffic downtown, economic vitality, and all kinds of dynamism downtown. So that's the geography. The idea of this work group is that it'll be relatively quick hitter. It'll be a few months. It'll build on the work that's been done to date around infrastructure planning. We know from a study from Woodard and Curran roughly how much it would cost to fit out that area with the type of infrastructure that would be required to support the community's housing goals. We're going to be factoring in fiscal impact analyses around different types of housing and land use around different types of densities to make housing goals for the community work. So it'll be a relatively quick series. Our goal is to come back by December with a report. The representatives are all excited to participate. It ties in with the work of their relative communities. So this is about knitting together a lot of different priorities in the town and advancing important community goals within a tight geography that will minimize infrastructure costs and hopefully advance the economic development goals of the community. So by December, we'll have a good findings for you, and also the timing's good because the comprehensive plan process is unfolding. There's going to be a housing workshop coming up in September that this ties into, and then a future land use workshop that's going to take place in October that this type of information will feed into as well. So that's the goal tonight, is to follow up on the council's endorsement back in April with a little more meat on the bone this time. There's a work plan. You can get a sense for how it's going to flow, how the meetings will be organized, and what the deliverable will be to come back to you for.
Great. Thanks for that context. Any questions for Brett or any of the members designated for membership?
I see this, I'm on this as the council representative, and I see this as a way to sort of tie together a lot of these plans that we've been working on to really streamline implementation. So I've heard that is a concern for many folks, and I'm excited to pursue this.
My perception is the composition of the group is a lot of doers, and so I'm really excited to see results come from the group, even by December. If that's possible, that'd be fabulous, with specific recommendations and action items so that we can get some momentum behind the various plans that you've referenced already. Thanks, Brett. All right, so any other questions? We're ready to vote. All those in favor of creating the dog bone work group, item number 207-24?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right.
Thank you.
Got your group. Way to go.
Brett, can I just comment that I think it's fantastic that you have a charter already and you already have dates lined up for the committee meetings. I think that's really a wonderful thing.
Downtown vision paying off.
Yeah.
I love a Gantt chart.
Yeah.
Okay, our next item is item number 208-24 to consider action relative to an agreement with the Freeport Wood Bank.
I can take this one.
Councilor Benoit, would you please read this?
Be it ordered that the town manager be authorized to negotiate and execute an agreement with the Freeport Wood Bank or associated legal entity for the project to allow for the operation of a firewood bank at the Solid Waste Recycling Center at 100 Hedgehog Mountain Road.
Second.
Earl.
Mr. And I will get his name wrong, so I want to say his name's Tony. Approached me a couple months ago with the idea of creating a wood bank at the recycle facility. Basically, they would bring the wood in, they would do all the processing, and then the wood would be loaded by them and hauled out to a family in need. It would require no town personnel at all. Everything would be done by them. They do need a straw storage container to put a log splitter, and Mr. John, you will love this, electric chainsaws. So I do hear you. So they've asked that be put there so that they could store their tools in there.
It's their container, or are we providing the container?
They would provide everything.
Better. I had a question. I walk frequently on the trails that are adjacent to the transfer station, and just in the past couple of months, there's considerable tree fall of really nice-looking wood. I'm wondering if several of us might volunteer to actually contribute that to the wood bank.
I'm sure they would take it, yes. And then even when we cut trees down now, when we cut a burnable tree down, we're going to give it to them.
Yep.
And let them, because it's going to families in need.
Great.
And I should mention, they've started 3 of these, and I do not remember the other towns. I think one of them was Thompson, that they've started some of these, and they've been working pretty good.
I'm curious about keeping up with demand. I imagine there's a lot of demand for this kind of thing.
A fair amount. Last year, there was some, the community center helped. I want to say it was 5 or 6 loads of wood from last year. But once they get into town and get going, I'm pretty sure there's going to be a big demand for it. He's actually watching online. He was going to be here tonight, but he couldn't. He's in Florida helping his mother clean up. So he was wanting 100 cord. Now I think that's a little much because this has to set for 1 year. We can't give it because it's green, so it's going to have to set out there for 1 year before we can start delivering it. So.
Yeah, I would like to just point out that I guess it's fabulous to have a third-party group operate on town premises. We just want to make sure there's signage there so that anybody coming there doesn't mistake it as a town operation and end up coming to town hall with questions or, requests or whatever, so that if it is going to be a independent operator, so to speak, and we're providing the space for it to happen, we just make sure that's on some kind of signage.
That, which we're asking Ms. Sophie to be able to work an agreement out with them, but that and some other things was going to be put in there. Really didn't need anybody at the facility when we weren't there, so that they would only be able to operate the days that we're operating.
Right.
And things like that signage, that was by staff at the recycle facility, that people know that's not town wood, that it's there to stay. So things like that, we have an excellent town manager, she can handle that.
Right. Darrell?
On the same line as great stuff happening, so it happened to be, we had a municipal facilities meeting, and I got an email from McGuire, and the Freeport Rotary Club has received a Rotary grant where they've bought a tool trailer that will carry tools, and they've got an agreement with Hancock Lumber of Brunswick and Yarmouth to supply materials, and they're going to go to a residence in Pownell and Freeport who may need a ramp if they have mobility needs. They're going to go out and try to take and fix windows that may be in need to be repaired with heat or whatever. And this is a really exciting project, I thought, when he was mentioning it to me. And they were looking for a place to store it. It's a trailer. So I was asked during the municipal facilities if the manager or whatever could look at that. I think this would go hand in hand with the wood project up there, and probably a lot of the same people that need assistance with wood may need assistance with some sort of work or whatever. So I don't know if that's something that could be looked at and maybe come back at a later date to see if we could accommodate the Rotary. But the Rotary does a ton of work, for the town. And when I was a Rotarian, we did, I think we did 4 ramps of people in town that needed it at no cost to them. So I'm hoping we maybe can find a place to help them out.
Great. Thank you. All right, any other questions about formation of the wood bank?
Really quickly, I just want to thank Tony DeMarco, who is watching, but has been very gracious with his time. He's a volunteer. He thought this was a great idea. And he's been patient about seeing it come to fruition, so I just want to thank him for having the idea and bringing it to the town.
All right, all those in favor of creation of the Wood Bank, item number 208-24?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Mr. Chair, can I have 1 minute? I should have mentioned this earlier, but I do want to let the council know that we did receive one of our plow trucks Monday past. We
Oh,
went
great.
up to Scott Hegan, it's the one that we swapped the bed over.
Yeah, yeah.
So we finally have that truck in-house, and we'll run it a little bit before the white stuff starts falling.
Great, thank you, Earl. Great job on getting the bids. All right, turning the last turn here. Our next item, we dealt with number 209 at the beginning of the meeting. Our next item is number 210-24. Consider action relative to a collective bargaining agreement with the Teamsters Local Union number 340 for the Freeport Fire Department. Do we need to have an executive session moment here, or are we ready to?
I don't think so. I got
Okay.
everything you asked for within the authority you gave me.
All right. Boy, I'm not doing good here, keeping track. Eric, I think we're up to you. Yeah, please read the be it ordered and further ordered.
Be it ordered that the town of Freeport enters into a collective bargaining agreement with the Teamsters Local Union number 340 for the Freeport Fire Department to be effective July 1st, 2024 to June 30th, 2027. Be it further ordered that the town manager be authorized to endorse the collective bargaining agreement on behalf of the town council.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. We've had material circulated, and we have also had executive session discussion about this. Any other comments for the manager or a request to have further elaboration on items?
Just one quick question. Has this been endorsed by the union yet?
So it has been endorsed by both unions, which I dropped an S on agreement because it should be agreements because there are two. They were, during negotiations, they were very appreciative for council's questions back and are very happy to have a set of rules to go by. They endorsed this over the weekend, so it has been ratified.
Okay.
All right, this may be the land speed record for approval of a labor agreement, but I think we're ready to vote. All those in favor of endorsing the collective bargaining agreement as negotiated by the town manager with Teamsters Local Union number 340 or the Freeport Fire Department? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, 7-0. Okay, next item on the agenda is item number 211-24 to consider action relative to some public art installation as negotiated by Meeting House Arts for the front of Town Hall. Councilor Pilch, could you please read the be it ordered?
Sure. Be it ordered that a Pinky art installation in front of Town Hall be approved and that staff be directed to amend ordinances as necessary.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. And I believe we're going to hear from Meeting House Arts on the context here before we have a discussion.
Yeah, I think Tom is also going to put up a picture for us. Brad is furiously doing that. There he goes.
Give it a little larger. I can start talking.
Yep.
My name's Suzanne Watson, and I'm the Executive Director for Meeting House Arts and a long-term Freeport homeowner. Meeting House Arts, in partnership with Freeport Climate Action Now and the Maine Coast Fishermen's Association, proposed to bring the Pinkies to Freeport this fall. If you're opposed to P words, you're going to hear a lot of P words, and I just give you advance warning. These 3 sculptures sat in Payson Park in Portland for the last 2 years, and they're now on the move looking for a new home. Artist is Pamela Moulton, also known as Posey, and she wishes to have them come to live in downtown Freeport for the next year. They've entertained thousands of people over the last 2 years in Portland and can do the same in our community. The Pinkies, as you see them here on the screen, offer tremendous educational and public art opportunities for Freeport, as they not only come to live among us, but come with a full year of educational and artistic workshops, art events, poetry readings, lectures, storytelling, and so much more. Following on the 2022 Downtown Visioning Plan's goal and action items, the Pinkies, entirely made of reclaimed fishing nets from our own Casco Bay, are public art that is prescribed to come to downtown Freeport as part of our work to revitalize Freeport. It is one of the 3 specific pillars of the arts and culture aspect of that visioning plan. They represent an economic attraction for visitors to the town, as they would attract strong media attention in short order. Between the visitors and Freeport citizens, we would have activity in a part of town that has gone begging for attention for its merchants and restaurants. In Portland, there have been poetry readings and music around them. They've been decorated for holiday events and special lighting. The depth they engender for better understanding of not only the arts, but also the fishing industry's needs and opportunities, just as they will in our community, they did in Portland, around aquaculture and fishing businesses. Placing them in front of Town Hall is a real statement of the interest of the town, its council, and its citizens that public art is important to the local economy. It will encourage public gatherings and discourse among our townspeople on a day-to-day basis, exactly what the town council in the visioning plan expected that would happen. We've considered other locations and looked elsewhere downtown to place the sculptures, but have found no likely place that will meet our deadline, which to give the artist a definitive answer as to whether or not we want the Pinkies in town this fall. Posey is currently refurbishing the sculptures, and finally finishing them. They were not finished before they were put in Payson Park. And she wants the new home for them by this fall. At least 3 other communities are asking to be considered to be home for them, in addition to us. We do have competition. And they should remain together wherever they are placed in town, because a great deal of the artistic value is gained within their interaction with each other. You can see how they're placed together here. This, by the way, is actually this is how they would look on our town lawn, the town hall lawn, at least from a side angle. They make a bolder statement together than they would alone in different locations. We debated that consideration and made a conscious decision that they should remain together. Additional information to share is that the town awarded a momentum grant to Freeport Climate Action Now, our partner in this work, to help move the sculptures to town. As part of the requirement to receive this money from the momentum grant, we have 3 preconditions to meet. 1 is to gain town approval, which is why we're here tonight. 2 is to determine the right location, which is also why we're here tonight. And the third, and the one that follows the other 3 once we have those first 2, is to match the momentum grant, $5,000, dollar for dollar. The budget to move them here at this time is $10,600, which includes the necessary money to also remove them at the end of the year, 1-year period. They are temporary structures, temporary public art. We have plans to raise the additional funds once the 2 first conditions are met. We've also submitted a grant proposal to the Welch Family Fund for money to carry out the planned educational workshops and events over the next year that we have the Pinkies. No other appropriate location exists that can be obtained in the time needed to make the decision and raise the needed money. The 2 other possible downtown locations considered were 22 Main Street, owned, as we know, by the Mosier family, and the front of the lot in front of the old Key Bank building, which is owned by Jay Yomaz, who is in the process of negotiating rent, a long-term rent, for the use of that space. We feel that the three-way partnership we formed with Freeport, with Maine Coast Fishermen's Association, with Freeport Can and Meeting House Arts is the right combination of knowledge and expertise to take maximum advantage of this opportunity. We have arts, environmental, and fishing aquaculture industry interests represented to educate the public about the value of public art in Freeport, see the value of helping fishermen deal with their reclaimed materials no longer of value to them, and also showcase the innovation the fishing industry is bringing to our community, including new food products and utilizing the concepts of regenerative aquaculture. It's all here in the Three Pinkies. So I ask for your support and permission to bring these wonderful creatures to our town and begin to fulfill the goals of the Downtown Visioning Plan. We want public art downtown. Our town folks have told us that they want so in large numbers. It simply waits for the right start, and that start has come to us. Thank you for your time, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions or concerns you might have.
Very likely be a couple of comments or questions here, but I'll start. All of the adjunct learning opportunities and understanding of what is represented here about food systems and the working waterfront and our fishing industry, how does the general public access that? Is there going to be, what would be their opportunity for the general public who might drive by town hall twice a week and then some Thursday later this fall is going to see these things and wonder, how am I going to engage in this? What are they? What's the opportunity? Is there going to be permanent narrative associated with the installation, or is there regular programming? What could we do to encourage the public to learn more about why these are here?
Thank you for the question. Posey, who is the artist, has spent the last 2 years with the Pinkies in Payson Park doing exactly the kind of workshops that have brought in the Lobstermen's Association as well, Lobstermen's Foundation, I should say, and other fishermen. She's had extensive conversations and brought extensive experience with those folks into workshops, into children's activities that involve, teaching about the reclaimed fishing, the net reuse of the fishing nets, as well as art activities that go with them. I'm actually aware that Ken Sparta is standing right behind me here. Would you like to say anything, Ken?
Sure. So, first of all, I think just the fact that it starts the discussion is huge, John. As a diver, fishing gear is a concern to all of us. As somebody who's growing kelp on thousands and thousands and thousands of feet of line, finding a place for that line to go is really important. And we have some great folks that are already part of our Makers on Main program that we have here, who are selling stuff made from recycled stuff and recycled lines. We also have people that are doing this that are residents of Freeport. So we have that art happening like on a small scale, but to have this on a big scale where we can start to have conversations about, for me, I can bring people into my restaurant. I can say, oh yeah, I grow 22,000 feet of linear feet of kelp. What does 22,000 feet of line look like? How many years, right, can I use that before it has to become something else? There's a lot to talk about there. To have our students in the town of Freeport be able to walk down there and look at artwork that somebody has created from discards and have those conversations and have that, like, you think about those little minds with those ideas going, and suddenly they can see artwork that's right here in town. We need to be doing more of that. We need to be, I think, a little bit more provocative with public art, and I think this is a great opportunity to do that.
Thank you. I'm 100%, 110% in on the idea. I'm trying to share how this provides all those opportunities to the general public who may not be watching tonight and may not be attached to an art student class or whatever. So I'm just wondering if there's going to be any part of the installation that
we
leads
were
people.
actually, so as we were brainstorming this with Maine Coast Fishermen's Association, the idea of bringing in fishermen that could speak about this on a regular basis. The idea of, Makers on Main, when we have that, having the folks that make these items actually be near the pinkies,
Yeah.
just to start that conversation is phenomenal.
An idea that I recently saw, because everybody does the world through their phone, instead of trying to figure out text of what might go on a sign, just put a QR code
Yeah.
and then lead them to all of the pages and the history and all of the stuff that's going on. And
Absolutely, and those of us that are merchants here in town could have those QR codes that direct people to the
Yeah,
pinkies as well.
yeah, great idea. Love it.
I think there's a lot of that opportunity.
And we do, at Meeting House Arts, have a full marketing committee capability, and the social media aspects of all of this will be totally utilized. Happen to have the head of our marketing committee sitting right here. And so we've been talking about how we can start to, gen up some real attention to this over the full year that we have this. I'll give you one lesson that I learned that was totally blew my mind, is Posey, when she was trying to figure out what to do with the extra net she had in the backyard, that she simply was overwhelmed by the amount of net that the fishermen, the lobstermen, fishermen were bringing to her. She had more than she could possibly use, and she said, all right, I've got to do something with this. It's totally against my nature to take it to the landfill, but she did. In her little small pickup truck, she put as much net as she could in the back. She took it to the landfill, and she returned home with it because it was $800 to leave that one small pickup load of net in the landfill. So that's the kind of thing the fishermen are facing here, that's the kind of cost that's prohibitive for them. So this kind of alternative use is really critical to show people.
I will say too that before I knew sort of the backstory of these, I certainly had a reaction, which I think is part of the point, right? So I was kind of like, what are these? And then you are drawn to learn more about them and kind of understand the background, and that makes them very cool. One question I did have was sort of, how do we know they stay safe? How do we know there's not going to be vandalism or anything that happens to them?
We've got an engineer's study that shows how the steel structure inside of them. They are very strong and very stable, and they sat in Payson Park for, like I say, 2 years without. Go ahead.
I think if they made it in Payson Park, they'll be fine in front of Town Hall. Just saying.
It's a concern.
As somebody who grew up in Portland.
They're safe and taken care of.
Daryl?
When other organizations wanted events coming in, they would have to supply liability insurance. Who's supplying that?
That is actually part of the bid. That is included in the money that we would be raising to cover it. That's specifically covered.
And then the other question, if it's successful, we hope it is, if there's damage done to the grass or whatever, that...
It left absolutely, as Posey told us, it left nothing. You could not tell they were in Payson Park at all.
Yeah,
And Earl is not here anymore, but Earl...
I'll take care of it, I promise, Daryl. In all seriousness.
Perfect.
Freeport Oyster Bar will pay for it.
I think you did have a letter that you shared at Municipal Facilities that was from the Parks Department in Portland saying that there was no long-term impact to the grass.
I think I left those letters on the desk when I left there, too.
Dan?
In the order that we've got before us, it says we might need to amend ordinances in order to do this? No, we don't.
So we thought that, but I then took some steps over to code after we had our discussion. And the code officer and I agree that this is really public art. And he would not see this as a sign. So if he doesn't see it as a sign, I don't think we need to do anything.
And luckily, we're not peddling any non-food items.
Eric?
I think, obviously, we talked about this at Municipal Facilities. To throw out another P word, I think what these are is provocative. And I think that's what you want from public art. I think we have no illusions that there will not be someone with an opinion about these. But I think what's important for me in terms of this sort of provocative public art is not just all the programming and the discussion that's going to ensue, but that there is a time limit to it. I know that often with even temporary art installations, they can sort of just take hold and live there. And I think what's reassuring about this is it really is a focused time period where there's going to be programming, and then there's a list of other people waiting for them. And that part of this fee that you're paying is both the installation and the removal. So there's no delay in that. That this is a year and we're the sort of first stop on a tour of the coast after they were in Portland. So
Thank you, yes.
I'd just like to add one more thing. I never thought I'd be up here talking to Kathleen Sullivan, Freeport Climate Action now. I never thought I'd be up here talking to you about something called the Pinkies Project. But what I think is important to tell you about is why it's called the Pinkies Project and why it's pink. It's pink because of what's happening to the ice in the Arctic as it warms. As it warms, algae develops, and the algae are pink. So I think one of the other things that this project supports is our climate action plan and the kind of work and the kind of education and the kind of thoughtfulness that we're trying to provide around what's happening, the changes we're seeing right now, the kind of, the changes we're seeing to the coast, the changes we're seeing to the water. And the changes we saw last winter to safety. We were out without electricity for 4 days, and people were at risk. So I think this is another form of the conversation, is around what's happening and to the climate and to our safety here in the community, in addition to all the other wonderful things that this is a conversation about. Regenerative entrepreneurship. Local food, art, just so many, it hits so many categories that I just hope that we get to do this. Thank you.
Can I quickly offer a couple of points, too, from a staff perspective? The Momentum Committee awarded a grant here because they really saw this as a tangible movement of the downtown vision, something that people can see. A couple clarifications, too. There was a T-Mobile grant that we got a couple years ago, and it was targeted towards that space because it's a space that we can control. It's a gathering space, and it's designed, when it's completed, to bring people together and to experience the downtown vision. And we clarified today that as that plan for the front of Town Hall is revised and revamped and moved forward, that as long as these pinkies are on that side of the sidewalk, it won't impact construction on that T-Mobile Town Hall project out front. So it's a good way to kick that off and build momentum and get people seeing that space as a gathering point. And then behind that, hopefully there'll be more construction, more improvements, and it can really bring it to life. So.
I love the idea that I think we need a public art program. I think we needed it yesterday. I think it's clearly a manifestation of the downtown vision. And I agree with all the points of installing something at Town Hall that bring people together, gathering point, something to talk about. So all of that makes sense to me. My concern is that if we launch a public art program with a pink piece that we know is provocative, is that the right foot to start off on? Because it will create controversy. Not everyone is going to love these. It created a lot of controversy in Portland. There was a lot of discussion around, do people like it, do people not like it? So my question is there an alternative? Can we be stop number 2 on the tour, start the program on a strong foot with something that's accessible, maybe a little benign? So, and then people will fall in love with a public art program and say, when can we have more? And then this can be piece number 2, as opposed to creating the controversy right off the bat.
Is that a question?
It's an idea. So is that a possibility? To have it be?
It's always a possibility. I think that we've been talking about public art now for a long time. And it feels like this, I'll tell you the truth about this project that has absolutely floored me. This project keeps pulling me into this vortex of must do this. I mean, this project is speaking to me personally. I really did not see this in my future. It has brought itself, and it keeps coming back. It keeps coming and saying, this is now, this is us. It's time. And I just answer your question that I think provocative is exactly what we want to get to, because it does talk about what we can do. It excites people. It gets people, engaged in a way that actually I think is good for us. It's good for the town to do this now.
Let's call the Great Races our number one public art item. And then move this to number 2 and just go with it. And I'll leave it there.
I want to say that, what's that phrase of like, don't let perfect stop you from staying in the way of good? So even if this isn't the perfect first project, I don't want that to kind of delay these efforts of getting more public art around.
I think where I came down and what I said in municipal facilities was, I don't think this is necessarily the perfect place or the perfect piece, but we're 2 years behind on a project of reinvigorating the front of Town Hall. We're however many years into the downtown vision plan, and both of those things in terms of engagement, public art, all of that as a new life to Main Street that isn't what Freeport has been for the last 40 years. This really is a way of going out strong and taking a first step as a way of saying, yes, we're serious about all these things we've been talking about for 2 years. And it isn't, I think, perfect. The one critique that I've heard since that committee meeting is, well, can't we have our own art? Do we have to have, something that was already in Portland? But I think part of that is, this is something that's sort of migrating up the coast. I think that's the goal of this. And part of what Freeport is that it is engaging people that would never have seen these in Portland. And I think that does bring a new flavor to what Main Street is. And again, I think I think all of the feedback that we get can just be great input into the next project. And it's sure to generate feedback.
I also just add that we could probably have, I'm trying not to exaggerate here, 50 images of public art that we might invite to come to our community. And the 7 of us would very likely not ever get to a 7-0 on, this is good art.
That is what good art is, right?
And so I don't want, I guess, the opportunity and the momentum that's coming forward with this, not to be a pun on the grant, but that my first view of these was similar, that like, oh, wow. And then I got a chance to learn about it, and it took me about a half an hour to hear all of that. And that's a pretty small investment of time to understand what something that has lots of opportunities to share education and perspective and understanding where the businesses are and the fishing industry and recycling and the climate and what's happening in the ocean. There's just all sorts of things there that you could then spend hours learning about. So it is provocative. We're likely to get, like, where did this come from? Which is why I'd love to see if we had an opportunity to immediately address that with the public by giving them a resource, whether it's a QR code or a card or something that says, here, before you close your mind and say this is bad art, please read this and find out about where it's coming from. And then hopefully we can get some news coverage on it too.
That's the other P word, is press.
Press.
I think
and it is for 12 months. So
the kids in the community will gravitate to these creatures, and they'll bring their parents with them. I mean, the kids dance in these, underneath and such. And Posey said that it was just amazing, the kids who engaged with them just automatically.
And, when I was just doing a little bit of research, they're meant to be touched and explored. They're not hands-off, which I think is also important. So.
Absolutely.
Other questions about the action to move forward? All right. Item number 211-24 has been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? 6-1. Okay. Thank you very much, Suzanne. Thanks for the presentation, and thanks, everybody, for chipping in. Our next item is item number 212-24, consider action relative to use of a town property request for Mother Tree Pop-Up at a location designated as map 11, lot 27A. I think back to you, Matt. I think we're back down to the end. Please read the be it ordered.
Fantastic. Be it ordered that the use of town property requested be approved pending receipt of insurance.
Second.
Brett, want to give us a little bit of context here?
Sure, I can be quick. So Hot Dog Park behind Starbucks. That's a nice opportunity for a small pop-up business. There's peddlers there. It's in between LL Bean and Main Street. It's a high-activity space. And there happens to be an active Freeport resident named Greta Schneibel, who currently has a space in the mill in Brunswick where she has a curated vintage store. And she's been working hard to have a foothold here in Freeport. She's done a couple of pop-ups at the Grange and promoted that with pretty good sophistication on social media, and was able to track that her outreach and marketing brought people to Freeport specifically for vintage. And she's been looking around for a storefront that makes sense for her as a small business to test and grow and get a toehold here in Freeport. And she's been hustling, and she identified this space that she could utilize with a 10 by 10 tent with a nice curated display on Saturdays throughout the remaining warm months, and take advantage of that. She's obtained a temporary activity permit from the codes office, and this is really to formalize her ability to use a small space that will add more activity, more energy to that peddler experience there at Hot Dog Park. So I think she's a budding entrepreneur in town. This is an opportunity for her to continue to test ideas and grow, and hopefully bring her full-time into Freeport.
What's a rough dimension of what a pop-up vintage store looks
She
like?
has a 10 by 10 tent. So she'll bring it in every, on their days where she'll do it, she'll bring it in the morning. She'll merchandise, sell, engage with the public, and then at the end of the day, she'll take that down and go away.
I think that, and this may be in the application, but I think the dimensions probably should be determined, because this past Saturday, it was great to have her there. It was beyond the tent. And so I think, just defining what that footprint is, and I don't have any issue with it being 10 by 20.
Okay.
But I think just making sure that we're clear about what the dimensions are would be important.
It's good feedback.
I'm also looking at the application, and it's only for a few select dates. It's not all season.
Correct.
Yeah.
Other questions for Brett? All right, been moved and seconded. All those in favor of item 212-24, use of town property request for a Mother Tree pop-up at Hot Dog Park? All those
Aye.
in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, 7-0. That's our last action item on the agenda this evening. Next item on the agenda, before we get to some informal other business, we have a public comment for those attending virtually. Please use your raise hand feature if you're watching online and wish to make a public comment on to the council this evening. Not seeing any. We'll move on to other business. We have just two items. Discussion regarding town legal services and discussion of a graffiti, hopefully that's a graffiti removal program.
It is, but we're hoping to table that tonight because the committee has not reviewed it yet.
Okay. That's pretty easy to do. We don't even need a motion because it's other business. So first item would be discussion regarding town legal services. And Eric, your name's next to the item.
Yeah, I noticed that my name is next to that. I think that came out of a conversation with the manager about the fact that it may be time for us to put out an RFP for legal services. I think what we have identified within the last year is that we are looking for quite a variety of legal services that are specialties in addition to the town attorney of record that we've appointed. And so that was really where I was asking, how do we go about that in terms of what's the process? So you may be able to pick it up from there, Sophie.
So a couple of things. We are finding that because our quasi-judicial or regulatory boards need legal assistance, they're dealing with technical things, that if we go to a single town attorney, that attorney cannot also represent the board. We're also seeing when you only have one corporate counsel, if that person is busy, if that person has taken a vacation, you are kind of waiting. And everybody has strengths. I will tell you, I come from being used to using two law firms. Each had their own specialty, but also when I would call the one that was less expensive and local, and they were too busy, I could pick up the phone and call somebody else and get something moved through. So I don't know if we want to have a discussion about what we might be able to do in terms of establishing our legal counsel in such a way that we can move things through in a timely fashion and get the support for both staff and boards.
I'd like to start off with just a recommendation that you bring two things forward to us.
Okay.
About how you see it. You and the staff are going to be some very high percentage, I won't say, the engagement point of contact with the attorneys that we may retain. Counsel getting legal advice is usually very contained and very, very, very specific after there's been engagement with the staff. So I think it might be easier for the council to react to a proposal with maybe an A and a B option from your perspective after consultation with your department heads.
Okay. I can do that. I will say that in the past, Freeport has carved out personnel, legal services, and I would want to continue doing that. We're getting really good, timely legal services, and they have knowledge of some of the very unique things that make Freeport, Freeport.
Are there elements of input for the manager?
Is it, sorry, Daryl. I was just going to ask where we have appointed, the council appoints the town attorney, are we able to appoint a firm as the legal representative rather than an individual?
That's normally, like, I was used to saying, and I'll use this firm because it's up in Bangor and we're not going to go there. Farrell, Rosenblatt, and Russell was the town attorney. Roger Huber was the attorney that we used, but it was the firm. I think it has to do with how firms choose to cover and how much people choose to keep internally. I do think you have an issue in talking with a law firm that doesn't have a conflict. One of the things I learned is it really is firm to firm with regard to board and staff choices, that within one firm, they're probably not going to put up the wall, which takes a lot of effort to keep that. So maybe have one that gives good representation to boards and committees, and another one that might not do that, but might do something different.
Daryl?
Well, I would like to suggest maybe a report, and I'm not sure if the September, our first meeting is September, or the second one from Sophie on what we could do to improve our efforts and efficiencies, and then maybe some sort of direction we could have as a line item at that meeting may be helpful. Because I think it's important that we move on this quickly, and the budget's been passed, we know what we got for funding, so now we can go out and you can, hopefully find someone to fill the bill, and we can take relatively quick action on it.
And I'm not saying at this point that we might not find that our current law firm might be good for some things. It's not a bad firm.
All right, so we'll take this up. I'm going to suggest, since we just set 5 public hearings for the first meeting in September, that we aim for the second meeting in September for this discussion. Does that give you enough time to? All right, so we'll hear back some information and feedback and a position paper from the manager. Daryl?
One other thing, in light of the discussions of the public comment period, I'd like to propose a motion that we do not expend any more staff time or funds to look at the item of noise and guns. I think it was pretty clear that, people don't want that addressed. So I'd like to propose that as a motion.
I don't support that. You gonna second it?
I'll second it, yeah.
Yeah. I'm nervous that could set a dangerous precedent that we can now set motions to not talk about things that are hard. I don't appreciate that being a possibility. I also think that the action of information finding does not necessarily lead to action, and so I would still be very interested, because it still is a concern of some of our constituents, to hear on the 3rd what you and the chief are able to find.
When I talked to the chief today, there were 34, over the last 5 years, there have been 34 complaints about noise. That included all noise, not just gunfire. That doesn't rise to the level, to me, in a town of 8,000 people, of being something that we should be spending a lot of time on. We're just saying town resources. You guys can go out and do all that resource, all that stuff. That's not what I think you mean. What we're saying is, we've got a lot of other things to do that the town should be spending a lot more time on.
That's exactly the information we asked for. So you may have heard that directly from the chief, but we specifically asked for that to come from the chief back to the council, and that's all we asked for. So it sounds like he has already expended that energy. All we're asking for him is to come here and say that to us. And what we specifically asked for was to understand the scope of the problem. And once we have that data, we can go back to these constituents who are raising it as a concern and say, we looked at it. We do not find that the scope of this issue is something that we're going to take action on. I will, but saying we're not going to talk about it is not going to stop those conflicts.
That's not what he said.
I didn't say we're not going to talk about it. All I'm saying is I don't want to expend any town resources, staff time or whatever, for looking at that. I think we need to talk about it, but.
Gathering information is one thing, but looking to get around the rules, I mean, that's, I think, where we are.
Can I also, I think this issue will continue to expend at least law enforcement time, because these calls will continue to happen. And what I saw today, so there's going to be a response, which is time and resources consistently. It will keep coming up to council. It'll keep getting redirected to Stofie and staff. It'll keep being a resource drain until we can figure out the root cause and figure out what direction to take, if any. I don't think we heard the same thing during the last meeting. I agree with Councillor Smith that we were looking for information and there was no dedication to any action, potentially no action. It's a information finding, root cause analysis, so we know we have that data to be informed if there's an action or if there's not. Sophie, this has been a directive on her plate for a couple of weeks at this point. There's already been time and effort, so why not finish it up?
Can I just ask a clarifying question? How much more time are we talking about? Are you planning on spending another hour or two on this, or are you planning on spending a couple of days on it?
Oh, no, just a couple of hours to format what we have. I have not heard Chief's statistics or seen the data points of where and what type. I'm a little concerned with that number if it's all noise over 5 years, because I know we had significant complaints on airboats, and that would have been noise. But I also have a little bit of a concern when, and I will talk to my staff about when council asks for data and information, that should really come back to the whole council and not individual councilors. Simply because at this moment that's raw, and we're trying to put the storyboard together for you to demonstrate the data that you were looking for. It won't take much time, but it's already worked into my workload.
Might I suggest that, and I'm not detailed on some of the communication back and forth because I don't participate in social media. Might I ask that we put a report on noise complaint data as an other business item so that it's not an action item, but that we have an allocation of 10 minutes to hear the data that's been collected, and this group can decide there if it wants to move anything further about pursuing and giving direction to the staff, and we can have a vote on that at that point.
And I think that was the original plan. It was never going to be an action item on the 3rd. That if you go back and watch that July 16th meeting like I did, that was made very clear by Sophie that she would specifically put it as other business to avoid the perception of action. And I also think I'm grateful for the feedback we received today, because I think there's a lot of agreement that it's a neighbor-to-neighbor issue. And what I would like to see is, if we hear that people who are complaining cannot figure out who is doing it, how can we help facilitate or give direction to resolve that? That's not an ordinance, that's guidance to our staff.
The concern that people have, and I've voiced it, which is when we start down this road with government, we can sit here and say, we won't have an ordinance, we won't have this. And we've all seen it when that, in fact, does happen. So I clearly don't support any further action. That's where I stand. And I think my constituents that have called me need to know that. And I think they need to know where we all stand.
Can we make that any clearer for your constituents? I think I also made the point that I've really enjoyed having conversations with folks that have been alarmed by this conversation, and I have found that we often find common ground, and that's my goal for this process. It's certainly not, I don't want to put any more strain on our system as it is, but this is an issue that I think we can provide some guidance on. That's not regulatory. And if I can make that any more clear, please let me know.
I think that my concern about shutting this down right now is to say, we all sat here 2 weeks ago and we made a request for information. And that we have now sent our staff into action requesting that information. And now what I'm hearing you say is, well, most of that information has been gathered, but we don't want to hear about it. We don't want them to come here and report that information, which is staff time. That's what I don't understand.
What I'm saying is, we have taken an action to ask staff to get some information coming. And, I think Sophie said that's probably forthcoming shortly. But the division we're creating, we went down this road 18 years ago within the community, and I said at the last meeting, be careful where we go on this, counselors.
I agree.
And so just be aware that I think we are treading on areas where, my personal opinion is, we have no business in. People are following the state law. People are abiding safely. We have had no injuries, but yet we want to go out for 1 or 2 complaints of someone that moved here and doesn't like the noise. And I wonder, as a gun owner, is it another move behind the scenes to take away more gun rights? I
So
don't know.
I would like to say
So
something.
we're going in a dangerous area, and that's just where we're headed.
This didn't feel important to say earlier, and it feels important now, that some of the complaints we have gotten have been from veterans with PTSD who have lived here generationally. So it's not just new people who have sudden issues with guns. This is a very robust issue that's not black and white. So I would love to see, because what I've heard from the chief, I've heard from people who have complained, that there's no way to figure out who is doing it, and they feel stuck. So how can we help with that neighbor-to-neighbor connection?
Daryl, can I just offer some thoughts? That I'm afraid if we cut it off, we'll be stuck in limbo, and it will keep coming back, meeting after meeting. So I'm not saying that I'm intending that we're going to pass an ordinance or offer directive or take concrete action, but I think it would be nice to just get the information, and then we can all, like you're saying, like just offer where we stand and what we're going to do about it or what we're not going to do about it, but have that be somewhat definitive on the 3rd or maybe a meeting after, so that it's not this thing that's stuck in limbo. It came up, we learned what we could, we decided to do something, or we decided that we're not going to do something. That's what I would suggest.
And I hear your point, Daryl, but what you're saying about division, I don't think we are trying to create division. I think what we're trying to do is find common ground. And that was my point of sharing the conversations that I've had, is when I have said to people very clearly, this is about trying to understand the scope of the issue, period. And we're certainly not proposing any action. We're simply trying to understand the scope of the issue. And when I have made that point very clearly, and I've also said this has nothing to do with hunting, there's a big difference between hunting and rapid fire semi-automatic target shooting. Those are 2 different issues. And I have not heard anybody up here say we want to restrict hunting or anything like that. And I think it's just very important to be able to communicate that, but also not to shy away from, we have to have difficult conversations. And in order to do that, for me to feel like I'm be able to make decisions, I have to have the information. And I don't know who to turn to if it's not the staff.
Yeah, I also think I want the people who are being responsible and neighborly and doing everything they should be doing to be able to keep doing that. I think there's no reason they shouldn't be able to. It's how can we make sure we can facilitate that comfort level for that communication, for folks to feel like they can address it without it keep coming up to this level.
And I think, one of the constituents I heard from brought up airboats, how he hates airboat noise, but we don't do anything about it, so why are we trying to do anything about firearms? And I said, that's a great example. What we did is we listened to the people with concerns, we reached out to the state, we gathered information, and we did nothing about it in terms of action. But we did listen, and we did have a conversation, and I think that's all we're asking for here. We have a motion.
All right, robust discussion.
So it's a motion on.
Maybe just for me, but could you restate the motion, Daryl, so I understand exactly what we're
The
voting on?
motion was that we not expend any more staff time on gathering information, is what the motion was.
And in your opinion, does that include making a report of information that's already available, already collected?
In my opinion, I think probably almost done, so we need to have that come forward. I agree with that, but that was, my intent of the motion.
All right, so the motion is to not further direct the manager or the staff to continue to pursue gathering more information.
Would that include not allowing Sophie to format her report and take a couple more hours?
No, that's not included, no. We need that.
Okay.
Okay. So, all those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
All those opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
2, 3, 4. Motion fails, 3 to 4. Well, Dan and I will work with the manager to get some report of this data on a subsequent agenda. We'll have to see if it's going to be available by the 3rd or if there's room on the 3rd.
I would just suggest, because when things were, since you're not on social media, I'll tell you about it. Over the weekend, things got a little bit chatty, a little spicy, and I had folks contact me and worked with Caroline to post a Facebook, an item on the town's Facebook page that just clarified for people what the town council's direction was. But I said in that post that we would be chatting about this as other business on September 3rd. So we're all walking towards having this for you the last week of August for the September meeting for your discussion.
So that's adequate time for you to
Oh, yeah.
finish? Okay.
I think what would be helpful if that's an accurate date and that can be posted so people know for sure. That would be very helpful, yeah.
It'll be on the agenda.
It will be on the agenda. It's been on Facebook. Yeah, I'm just working at getting my own access to Facebook, which is a challenge.
Dan?
Can I have a comment and a motion? A quick comment just to thank all of my colleagues up here. We don't agree on everything, which I think is healthy, but I love the respectful dialogue we have. And again, I think I've mentioned before, I've seen other councils in other towns that disagree very vehemently and less respectfully than we do. So I just want to say that I enjoy working with you all. And with that, I would make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. We're adjourned. 9:35. We
Thank
were
you, Sam.
very close, within
That
6
is
minutes of your
why
projected time,
I'm
Chris.
here.
And that's why you're staying here.
Yes, I love it.
We'll see if we can spice things up.
Yeah. A little bit.